Okay, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so based on our testing, it looks like the live stream is working today. For those of you that don't know, it's only not worked twice. Both times were during an event I hosted. So I think it's me. But I think it's working today. So please let me know if you get an email from a colleague at home trying to watch remotely that indicates otherwise.
If it's not working, it might help to use Internet Explorer.
Okay, so what am I doing? Okay, so we have a jam-packed agenda today, so we'll just get right into it. As usual, for those watching remotely, you have the opportunity to provide real-time feedback or ask questions by emailing Matt to my left, the email address posted on the agenda. And you can always email me or call me afterward. So the first item on our agenda is what I've deemed the final review of the proposed regulations. Yesterday, I received a handful of suggestions from the RISA folks, which I've imported into the version that I have posted on the screen, but I didn't have a chance to circulate based on the timing. So I'm going to go through those RISA suggestions, and then if any of you in the room had further critiques to offer to the regs, then I don't want to say like now's your last opportunity, but I'm hoping that this is the last time that we're looking at like these regs, because today is my intended last meeting of this work group for phase 2, because it's November 28th and I have to write a report and get it filed. So that does not mean that it's the last time you'll be hearing from me. You'll be given an opportunity to review my work group report, in which I'm obviously recommending a phase 3, and we can talk about that more at the end of today's agenda. But I just wanted to say at the outset today, the reason the meeting is going so long is because this is the last chance to work through major issues for phase 2. So we'll get right into it. I've done some formatting here, so it's showing up in red underline because I'm trying to get this ready for filing. This color red does not indicate red line as compared to what you saw last time. So where I have inserted some red line again is the handful of RISA suggestions that I received yesterday, and I'm going to walk through those now. The first one has to do with the definition of seamless move. We talked through last work group meeting the possibility of adding a slight tweak to the definition here to make it clear that this wasn't like a request of a customer, that the whole concept of a seamless move is that it's processed unless the eligibility criteria are not met, which are defined in the later section. So to further refine this concept, the RISA folks have suggested that we add this clause at the end of the definition that says, and without any affirmative action by the customer. Jake, please, but I'm going to repeat you if you don't come to the mic.
I just want a suggestion. Maybe add the word further between without and any, because
Any further.
if you don't add that, it normally suggests that there could be choice of a supplier without the original affirmative.
Phone call. Okay. Is that, thank you for that. Does that make sense? Everybody in the room? Okay, before I forget, let me just add that to the gas section. So,
and if we have suggestions on the same definitions, do you want them now, or do you want to wait until after you go through all of them?
of recess. No, I would like the, so that's a good question. The question is if you have suggestions to the page that I'm talking about right now, do we want them now or at the end of recess? I think now, so before we change subjects. So if you could just approach the microphone for me, please.
Okay, I'm Rebecca Bowman. I'm with the Howard County Office of Consumer Protection. And this is really changes to both the definition of instant connect and seamless move. It's
Okay.
more grammatical than anything else.
Okay.
And I can give you a copy of what I have. I would propose changing it to instant connect means the ability of a customer to choose to have supply service from a supplier start on the customer's first day of new utility service without having to enroll in SOS. It's the whole idea of that the moving, that the choice move, anyway, it's grammatical, and I don't think it does anything in terms of the meaning of the section.
Understood. Could you just read it to me one more time, please?
Sure, and I can give you a copy
Even better.
of this.
Okay. So thank you. The screen should be viewable to those at home, probably in a larger font than you're seeing now. Let me see if I can zoom in. Okay. Means the ability of a customer.
To choose, as opposed to the choice of supplier moving, it's the ability of the consumer to choose to have it connected. And I'm sorry I didn't send this to you yesterday. I should have.
First day of new utility service without having to without that. To enroll in SOS. Okay, I think I've captured that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's basically the same thing with seamless move. It's again, making and I don't know my parts of speech, the ability of the residential small business customer to choose to have their current supplier provide service to a new address within the utility service territory without interruption, and then I don't have any objection to what Rissa added.
So you're basically just putting it into the active voice, and the actor is the customer.
Thank you very much. I knew there would be somebody who had the terminology down. The intent wasn't to change the idea. The intent was just to make the language more understandable. I thought the language was really confusing.
You're keeping it in the
I know.
Well, some of us hate the passive voice.
Yes.
It's not clear who's active,
I mean, if you want to take choose out, that would be okay, I think.
but that's the action. You can't take it
Well,
out.
that's right, you do. Yeah.
Well, you have to choose to have. It sort of seems contradictory without, I mean, obviously we support the without affirmative action. The whole point is to make it just seamless, so that it just goes with you if you move.
The word choice doesn't.
And it seems to not go together. I mean, those seem like contradictory
Yeah, I see what you
ideas.
mean.
What if you just said to maintain?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
fine. Maintain would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks right.
Yeah, that would.
Doug Mikeel, PHI. Do we need to spell out standard offer service instead of SOS?
I saw it elsewhere as SOS, but I'll make myself a note if it's not defined in the definition section.
I don't.
You didn't see it?
I took a quick look. I could
Okay.
be wrong, but I didn't see it.
Well, in offer service. Okay, do we need a few more minutes on this screen? Oops. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, SOS is on 19. I guess I just didn't turn the page.
I'll forgive you this error, and only this one. Okay. Again, it sounds like the intent was to revise passive to active and not intent. So if you go back and have a further thought about this, we can tweak non-substantive things after today before my report, but the substance needs to be nailed down, please. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next RISA comment. Oh,
Before you get there,
yep.
page 4, you have D, E, G, H. It's missing an F. Page 442.
D, E, G. Oh. Yeah, I think we deleted F last time. Thank you.
And that appears further in the document on page. I'll let you know when we get there.
Yeah, I'll do gas next. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H.
Page 24.
B, C, D, E, F, H. Okay. Okay. Moving into this section where we have added, this is in electric. We've added the eligibility criteria for instant connects and seamless moves and how that would be effectuated in enrollment and drops. There's this language here, and I flagged it. Upon review, the RISA attorneys have asked that we consider this comment. The language contemplates, an action of cancellation, expiration, or other termination, and the question, the concern that's being raised is that the utility may not know the status of the customer's contract with their supplier. So they want to know, how the utility would know this. I think this section of the regulations was copy and pasted or interpreted from Pennsylvania's regs. I don't remember an exact reason for this. So I don't know if we could hear from our utility friends, especially those with experience in Pennsylvania, if there was a reason for this section, if you need it. It sounds like RISA's preference may be to strike it, I guess, because there's some concern. I guess I understand the intent. The intent is that you're not re-enrolling this customer with the supplier if their contract has been expired or has expired or canceled or whatever. I get the intent, but how does the utility know that that's happened?
This doesn't happen too often, but I agree with Reese's comments.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Bill.
So Bill with BGE, for the record, agrees. I'm going to strike. Okay. All done. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward. So I don't see anyone from the technical staff in the room. I think this suggestion came from them. I'm now on page 7. I had received, if you recall, a handful of what were represented to me as like cleanup items from RM54, and one of those was this, that the supplier contract should be written, and the way it was explained to me at the time was that this was this was required in RM54, so they're just cleaning it up here. But I've got some pushback from Risa suggested this language wasn't necessary because there are other ways to contract. So my technical staff is not in the room. If anyone is watching, it would be helpful to send an email, or if anyone else wants to represent why this language was necessary. Otherwise, I'm just going to strike it if there's no defense.
This is Jacob. I think that it could be maybe reworded, but I think the intent is that, and I don't think that it was intended to prohibit electronic contracts. Certainly, with telephone contracts, they would still have to send a written. I mean, the idea is that for residential contract anyway, the agreement has to be reduced to writing, meaning an electronic document or a physical paper document. So we would certainly prefer to have that stay in the regulations, but if additional clarifying language needs to be added to address the concern that Risa has with it, applying some kind of prohibition on electronic contracts, then we're certainly willing to explore that.
Okay, are we in the residential? Am I in the residential section?
If we're not in the residential,
Okay.
Okay, then.
So that's the concern.
I don't care.
Okay, I'm gonna strike it then. Oops, I got overly ambitious there. I need my C. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I gotta stop it. Well, wait, let me look at my agenda. Let me come back to this page on website regulations. It's a longer conversation. So, hold your thoughts on page 11.
Well, before we get to page 11, Marissa, if you're striking written from page 7, what are you doing about page 8? Do you really want to take all of that stuff out without staff explaining why they think it's necessary and important?
Do you know Annette's extension? No.
This is all non-residential. Yeah, so I don't.
I don't know what to say.
Would a commercial supplier also, a commercial customer want to enter into an oral contract? It seems like one of those things that shouldn't matter if it's residential, non-residential. I don't really have a dog in the fight, but.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to follow up with our staff. If I can get someone down here, I wanted this, nailed down today, so I was hoping all relevant parties would be here. Okay.
Marissa, I don't,
Yep.
for what it's worth, but Eric did have notes on the second page of that, did he? On the notice of enrollment piece? My
No.
sort of recollection is that we had a concern with it in the one spot and worried about it precluding other kinds of contracting, but then in this other section, it wasn't the same concern because it goes more to this concept of the notice of enrollment. And I think when it concerns C&I customers, it's that you don't want to have to send an extra notice, that the contract can serve as the notice. That's what I'm recalling from back when we did ARM 17. But, so I don't know if the concern was the same.
Okay. Okay. If we can get our staff down here.
One question I have.
Mhm.
This is Bernice. It says or tariff in that, and I'm not sure what tariff.
Yeah, this is all language.
Makes sense?
This is all language that our staff had one in. So, did you find Annette's? Or can you email her and ask her to come down here, please? Okay, we'll come back to that. Okay, page 14, Risa suggested new language in the notice section. It states, in the event of a seamless move, a supplier may instead provide notice at least 5 business days prior to cancellation of a supply contract. This is an addition to the existing language, which is unchanged, which otherwise requires notice at least 30 days, a supplier to provide notice at least 30 days before a contract expires or is canceled.
Actually, I just have a question. I don't know if you can answer it. Would this mean that if the customer wanted to do a seamless move, but the supplier said, no, we don't want to continue this contract, they only have to give 5 days business notice?
That's how I read it.
Sorry,
What's can Lisa explain what
We are on page 14, so this is new language. It was not in the attachment that I circulated. I received this language yesterday from Risa, and it's showing on the screen. It'd be that's how I'm reading it, Jake. They say that in a seamless move, you only have to give 5 days notice, as opposed to the 30. I would.
I'm just curious as to why
Yeah.
Lisa has suggested that.
Yeah, I don't have any notes on that. Can you come to them?
So I think if a customer moves to a new premise and their load profile, Diana Burkhart with Direct Energy. I think the reason that we're asking for, I know the reason that we're asking for this is if a customer would move to a new premise and their load profile would be drastically changed after they move, and we quoted them at a price or we sold them, a contract, they enrolled with the understanding that their usage would be at a certain level, and then all of a sudden it dramatically changes, we would be able to cancel that contract with them with only 5 days notice instead of a full month. So that's why we were proposing that.
Couldn't you just use a contract that allowed you to adjust the price based on a change in the profile? The reason that I ask is that this is a pretty broad, a pretty big change from what the notice provisions that are currently in COMAR.
I mean, it's a very narrow. I mean, it's obviously a very narrow instance in which we would actually use this, though, right? It's only for a seamless move, and we're not going to be canceling all of our customers just because they're on a seamless move. I mean, I would think that it would be very rare that we would actually invoke this ability. So, but in case, we want to have the ability to be able to cancel the contract without the full 30 days notice.
It's more of an exception. That's very broad the way it's written.
Right.
It's like you could just decide
Right.
for whatever reason. Yeah.
Right.
For whatever reason. It almost seems like it's a one-sided seamless move where you guys get the option to have a seamless move or not without any. There's nothing written here that what you just said makes perfect sense. Right?
We've got.
The load profile, drastic change. I don't know how you would know that in 5 business days, or I guess it could be for some period after the seamless move.
Right. Right. That's presumably we would know it a little while after, and then we would be able to cancel the contract with only 5 days. So we're not saying 5 days after the seamless move would occur. We would say whenever in the course of
I think that makes it even more problematic.
Yeah, I do
Right.
too.
I'm sorry?
I think that's even worse.
I mean, after somebody moves once, it seems moved. There are 30 days becomes 5 from that point forward.
No. I don't think that's not what we're asking for at all.
Well, that's what it's worded.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not changing why you could terminate. You're only changing
Correct.
the timing.
Correct.
Okay. So if the contract says they can terminate at will,
Right. Which they basically all do.
do they? All right, well, fine. Never mind.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be, I think it's a contractual thing as opposed to being a homeowner.
Okay, so the pushback is that this is a contractual issue, and suppliers can cancel at will anyway, and you should have to provide 30 days notice of that cancellation. It seems like we're having significant pushback on this issue, so my suggestion would be that I don't have consensus to include this. It's something that you guys, if you revisit, can put in your comments, but I think that I'm going to have to take it out of the draft for now. Okay, Annette Garofalo is here from our staff council. I'm going to return to the previous issue and benefit from her expertise. Annette, just to fill you in, Risa had a question, some pushback about the addition of this language here. Oops, nope, that's not what I meant to do. I had understood that this was cleanup language from RM54, but Risa is concerned that that this will place a limitation on the types of non-residential contracts that can be entered into. So if you could just...
So this is Chapter 6, I think, right?
Yes. Regulation 4 of Chapter
right.
6.
And it's in the gas and the electric.
Non-residential.
Non-residential consumer protection. I think when I was involved when this was written originally, and I'll take the blame for also putting this written word in there. So I think at the time it was written, it was assumed that a contract for a non-residential customer would be in writing because they tend to be a lot bigger. And since that was this was effective, that what has happened is there have been a number of cases that have come through OER, and some of them have actually gone to the Public Utility Law Judge Division, and they've even been appealed. And the reason for that has been that the contracts were not in writing, and the customers involved were often contacted in their form as a residential person, and then also while they were on the subject, they signed up at the request of the seller for coverage for their business. So nothing is in writing, and they don't have the protections that the residential customers have. And you could say, well, maybe they don't need them because their businesses. But the bigger ones, I can't imagine the contracts aren't in writing, and the smaller ones need it in the sense of for a type of consumer protection, which is what this language is. When it was written, we didn't specify what the material terms and conditions were. So whatever those are in the minds of the contractors, that's fine. But this was put in to resolve an actual problem that came up multiple times since this was effective. And if that was the only issue?
I think so. So the question is, would you read the addition of that language as prohibiting telephone or electronic contracts? And I think what I'm hearing you say is no. It's just that the contract has to be reduced to writing after it's executed. I think their concern is like, can they not like enter into the contract over the phone or online if we insert this language?
Well, I don't know. I think that's really a legal question, whether written by definition include. I don't know. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Includes telephonic transactions. See, not for the residentials, we went into how you can contract. Certainly, you can contract by telephone. You can contract orally. There are many ways you can contract, but the issue, and I don't know whether it's better to have it written after the fact than not written at all. So if that's a reasonable compromise, I can see doing that.
I think the default rule under current law is that written includes electronic.
Yeah. So if that's the legal definition, then just putting written in there doesn't change it, but it means it has to be more than a guy on the phone saying, and I'll give you the best price you can. You'll be so grateful you did that. And then later on, when this person, and I don't mean to, I'm sure none of the people who actually were involved in these brouhahas are in this room, but so the idea is that you have something other than a guy on the end of the phone saying, I'm going to give you a really good deal. You're going to be so happy you did this. And then 2 years later, having something come up that costs thousands of dollars per month, where it should perhaps have been quite a bit lower. So, so if they get a contract after, they at least have that to go back to.
Frankly, yeah, I wouldn't understand why a supplier would even want to not memorialize an agreement in writing, because otherwise there's a dispute. There's going to be this question about what the contract actually was, and there's not going to be, a very clear statement of what that contract is. It's going to have to be built up on other evidence of what the conversation was in this phone example that Annette was talking about.
So could
I don't have a dog in this fight, but I do agree with Annette that there is sort of this gap in the law for small business customers, and I'm familiar with these cases that she's referring to, where there's sort of a simultaneous marketing of a
residential
small business owner.
What if I say a supplier contract shall be reduced to writing or memorialized in writing, or
I think that's much better than what is there now, which we thought meant written contract, but didn't say that. So reduced to writing.
memorialized in writing?
And I guess if it's reduced to writing, it's presumed that the customer will get a copy of that.
Well, I just had a question, and I thought what we were doing was integrating things that had already been agreed to, and I really think this is more than what I remember being discussed in our good to go. So, I mean, I do think it's a little bit challenging to put in something that really hadn't been discussed, because commercial customers are handled differently than residential. The customer complaints that you're referring to are where there's a residential customer and somehow the commercial customer gets tied on, which I would think needs to be addressed separately than taking all commercial customers and putting them under constraints that weren't there in the first place.
Yeah, I think the problem here from Constellation's perspective, we don't have a concern in substance with adding written here, but there's an inconsistency because the residential rules are more detailed in that they spell out enrollment methods. You have sections dealing with TPD, you have sections dealing with internet enrollments, and those work together with the written contracting requirements in a nice way. The non-residential rules are more high level, so from our perspective, I think this warrants some further discussion. So if we're going to open up the non-residential rules to add written contracting requirements, then we need more detail on what are the valid contracting and enrollment methods, and maybe that's a discussion that's beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here, and maybe we could address that in the days in the working group.
Okay.
If I can just
I-
throw in another piece. So the reason in the residential side,
mhm.
you can agree to something over the phone, then it has to be reduced to writing, and the consumer has to sign it, which means they
Mhm.
agree to what was reduced in writing. The problem with memorializing it is, what if it's not what the small business customer agreed to? What is their avenue? So I think he may be right that if there's less, I think it's more than just putting in writing afterwards. You want
Mhm.
something that both parties, and that's in writing, that both parties actually agreed to, if you want it to be a valid contract.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to restate that because I'm trying to preserve a record. I think we're getting a lot of pushback on the addition of making this written because it's beyond what was. I'm sorry, I did not understand that. I thought we were cleaning up things from RM54, but it sounds like this has transpired since.
Bernice is correct in that, well, this is all Commissioner Linton's fault because he got made a commissioner. So this was something that was going to go to an additional meeting.
Okay.
I didn't even send you the stuff that had to do with, there was some other stuff where we might have tangentially talked about it. So, this issue was not discussed. So, but it was something that he was aware of and was going to put before the group. There is one other thing. It's in the gas where the timing is wrong under the new regulations. I don't have my glasses on, so somebody will have to read it to me.
Wrong.
I think it says 14, and now it should say, I think, 3. So it's the same section. It's Comar, but it's 59. It's Comar 205906. No, it's not. Let's see. The switching would be, it'd be Comar 205904, I think. Although I thought everything I sent you was in 06, and it was a timing. It was just overlooked because it was in gas. And I don't think anyone would object to that. I can send it to Marissa again.
Was it in it was in what I've put here, or?
Well, I thought I sent to you everything that I had sent to Obie and that to Commissioner Linton and that we had discussed. But if not, I can resend it. This is probably not your last meeting, correct?
It is.
It is your last meeting?
Yeah.
Oh.
Bless America.
Okay. Does anyone have a copy that I can look at? Revised rates?
I tried to
Yeah,
flip
no.
it. Well, look, you
Here,
can.
Dad, I have a paper copy you can look at.
Thank you.
Want to shoot myself?
Anything to help, you know me.
Yeah. All right, so let me see.
Disregard my notes, please.
I'm not going to look at anyone's notes. I'm just really looking for, surely some of the suppliers have noticed this. Oh, this is electricity.
Are you talking about the accelerated switching?
Yeah.
It's currently 7. If the drops received by the utility less than 7 days before the first day of the next. Remember, it's more complicated with the gas than with. Like, it's only 3 days on the electric side. There's a different rule.
Okay, so it should be 7 days. It should not be 14 days in gas, and there is some place where it was left as 14.
And it's in a section that applies to all drops, regardless of whether it's residential. 2059.04.03 supplier drops.
03? Okay.
Well, I'm just looking at Comar on my phone. I'm not looking at this draft.
2059. Okay. Oh, 4.
Oh, so it's, so it's not here. It should be in what I sent you, Marissa, but I can't,
I see. Okay. Here you wanted 12 changed to 7 in 20590602.
Yes, that's what the commission approved.
We approved 12, and you want it changed to 7.
No, they approved 7, I think. So it's an inconsistency with the place where switching is first discussed, or where switching is discussed in the electricity section.
Okay, so this was this correction is an oversight.
Right, it was
Okay.
just an oversight.
Okay, so So B would not be unchanged then. This is. This is C2.
What page are you working on?
24.
So right now, 2059-0602 says a customer's choice of gas supplier is the gas supplier with the first enrollment of the customer received by the utility during any given month. That's what it says.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I know. I remember why that I didn't pick this up. It's because it's because what you have here is not the current version of Comar. The current version of Comar said
Came out okay.
what Jake just read.
Okay,
I can
all
pull that.
So then, no, I think what Jay read is, Jacob read.
Yeah, I'm not sure that
correct.
it's a great, because it doesn't reflect any of the accelerated switching. It also is weird because if I do an enrollment, then that apparently is my choice of gas supplier, even if I send in a second enrollment. So I'm not sure why this language was ever agreed to by anyone, because it doesn't make sense. But it currently says a customer's choice of gas supplier is the gas supplier with the first enrollment of the customer, is awkward, received by the utility during any given month.
So, but that doesn't deal with the timing from.
Yeah, so the language that
enrollment.
you identified in the version you sent to me, and it's coming back to me why I didn't pick it up, is because you must have been working off the previous version of Comar, which did speak to timing. So this is what you sent me, and I think this was the previous version of Comar, and it got changed. It must have been changed in ARM 54 because that's not what it reads
Should have
now.
been. So maybe that was my mistake, but it should be 7 days, and it's 7 days on the electric side. Well, it was going to be 7 days. That was one of the iterations, and now
Right.
I guess it's 3 days and twice a
Okay.
month.
So the question is, like whether we want to change what's on the screen right now is what is currently in Comar. So the question is whether we want to change that and go back to like the old version but just change the number, or if this is something that I'm going to have to push to phase 3 too, because this seems out
We
of
need
the...
to go back and check the record of
Yeah,
what happened in 54, on 54.
I think the commission approved this language at the rulemaking.
Well, I think they did.
Yeah.
Well, we would have had to, hopefully, otherwise it wouldn't have gone.
But there is some place in the gas regulations where it says.
No, this
14.
is this is where, so we took that out.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, so not here in ARM 54. So this is where it would have said 12 or 14, but the timing was struck completely.
Oh, I guess I didn't even know that.
Sounds like a lot of people did.
So there is sort of some inconsistency between what's currently 20.59.04.02, which is the accelerated switching for gas, and that section there, because And 259402, accelerated switching for gas, A3 says that enrollment shall be processed on a first in basis. Well, I guess that is consistent with what it says. So I guess what this is,
Oh,
the
here.
current law is
7.
saying is you can only switch once per month on the gas side.
And that's right.
Oh, this
because
is
it always-
touchscreen.
Something needs to change.
Yeah.
And I thought it was supposed to take place on the first of the month because it would be a calamity
It depends on
otherwise.
if it's received by the utility less than 7 days before the first day of the next month. And if that, in that case,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, here's your 7.
So that's
it
7
was changed.
days.
It was
Okay.
changed, yeah.
The language here is good, I'm not sure why.
Yeah, no, my mistake. My mistake.
Yeah.
Unless there is a
Discusses first
14,
here, and it discusses the duration
Right.
of the enrollment windows.
unless,
They would delete the other language.
unless there is a 14 in the chapter that I sent you where it's written contract.
No.
That's 7.
I'm sorry, in what?
And
2904.
2059-06, that may be, there may be a 14 in there as opposed to a 7, which would make it inconsistent with what we've been talking about.
That's the only thing that so this, what I've got now is what you sent me, and this was the only place that had a date changed. You didn't have anything in 06 that had a date change.
It has what you just put up on the screen, though.
Yes, but this is working off the old version of Comer.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
so if we worked off the new version, would it say 7?
This section in the new version doesn't have this language period,
Oh.
but it does have the 7 days in the section here.
Okay.
On enrollment, it says 7.
Okay, well, that's, then there's no conflict. I did it because I don't think they've been adopted as final.
Yeah. So, okay, but to get to the point about written, which was up. Where am I? Okay. So it's okay. So it sounds like I'm gonna have to hold this for a further discussion in phase 3. Okay. Three. Okay. Okay, so on the next page, this is language that you sent me, though, and that has, we're still in non-res, and we've inserted written and tariff. And I think Ms. McIntyre had a question about or tariff.
And I had, the whole issue hasn't.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Bernice McIntyre, WGL Energy Services. I think both sections I don't recall us discussing in RM54, so I'd ask you to hold off and let us discuss it in this working group in phase 3. But I also didn't understand the enrollment notice where it says Commission accepted utility supplier coordination agreement or tariff. What were you referring to on the tariff side?
I think it's just BGE calls it the supplier coordination agreement. I think other.
Okay.
It may be written
It's
in
the
their tariff.
utility-
It's a separate coordination agreement. I think
Okay.
It's as simple as that. if I'm not
It's the
mistaken.
supplier coordination agreement that might be embedded in a tariff.
In the tariff.
I was just,
Yeah. Okay, so this is.
but I have the same question about the whole section. I don't think we've ever discussed changing the non-residential language for the written contracts, which is still in this one, too.
Well, it's the same one.
Yeah, it's the same one.
You're correct. We did not discuss that. It's on our agenda.
Okay, so 2053, 06, 04, and 05. Well, now you have a preview. We're going to talk about this in phase 3. Okay. Okay. So this was also language that was inserted. It says except where required by law. I mean, I thought that was a cleanup item. Did anybody feel other? I just don't. I don't want to let Annette leave until we work through all these.
I would have to go closer to read it.
Yeah.
So that, again, that's something that is in the electric chapter
Yeah.
and didn't make it into this chapter.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna skip that. Okay, so then these were truly cleanup items. I may have got these from you or Risa. We had some internal references that had to be updated. That's all.
What page are you on?
Page 12 to 13. There are some internal citations that had to be updated based on RM54. No, I think that was it. Okay. Are there any other questions for Annette? Okay. I don't know if we have you with us or if I don't want to make you stand there. You're welcome to sit through the rest of the meeting.
If you're done with me, I'll go. But maybe then when you bring this up, if you'd like, if you add me to the list, then I can come. I'll come.
Okay.
Without someone coming into my office saying, "I was just watching such and such,"
Oh.
and they need someone from staff. It must be you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay. All right. So, it looks like the sheet that I've received from Ms. Bowman has some points to offer on page 17. If you recall, so okay. Before I let you explain the changes, let me preface this by saying this is language that was approved by the commission already in a waiver filing, and so I'm attempting to codify what was. Okay, let me take a step back just make sure I have the history correct. This was codified in RM54, but at the time of the rulemaking, there was a lot of debate about the background checks, and it was agreed that the suppliers could seek a waiver of this section while they worked on an alternative set of guidance. And when that was filed by Commissioner Linton in his previous role, attached to it was what I understood to be agreed upon substitution language, and the problem is that we never moved to the next step of putting it into a rulemaking. So this is cleanup in the sense of I'm attempting to now put into regulations what the approved waiver language has been. So I'm offering that as a preface because it makes me a little reticent to mess with language that's already been approved if it's a substantive change. I haven't had a chance to read this, so if you view this as a substantive change, it makes me a little concerned. But let me give you the opportunity to.
Okay. So what I was suggesting is adding here also in terms of agent qualifications that the supplier ensure that if there's a local, hold on a second, let me get my language in front of me now. There we go. That the supplier needs to verify that the agents met local licensing or registration requirements of the jurisdiction where the agent's going to be conducting business. Now, one could argue that in the door-to-door sales provision 20530805, it does say a supplier and its agent shall comply with state and local government ordinances regarding door-to-door marketing and sales activities. My concern with the way it's written now is a timing issue. I mean, I think, and again, this may be substantive, and if it's improper, then you'll tell me where it is proper to raise it. Is that we really want the supplier, before they turn anybody loose on the street, they should be confirming that their agents have the proper licensing of the jurisdiction they're going to be working in. That's my point in all of this.
Okay.
And even if it's redundant, it could help a supplier that is new to the game and is looking at this section to remind them about the existence of local.
Right.
Because what happens a lot is, when there's a enforcement proceeding, suppliers, I didn't know.
Right.
And it's, well, you can't, here's the law of the defense, and so they get penalized. So there could be a value in putting it in there. It's sensitive in one degree, but it really is to provide information to somebody who's reviewing these regulations to make sure that they're in compliance with the law.
Right.
The supplier's on the hook regardless because they're liable for the acts of their.
And we do hear that a lot. We'll contact the supplier and they'll say, "Oh, well, we didn't know our agent was operating there." And our response is, "Well, you should always know where your agents are operating." And so ultimately they do become licensed, but we don't want them out on the street unlicensed to begin with. I mean, that's what really separates the good guys from the bad guys, is whether they have actually complied with our licensing requirements. And so we don't want anybody to be put in the bad guy category.
Okay, so let me just finish typing out and make it clear where yours differs from the language on the screen so everybody can know what we're talking about.
Right.
Qualifications. Okay, so the key difference is the insertion of door to door. This is different.
Yeah, the rest of it is just,
Yeah, okay, so the
grammatical cleanup.
yeah, okay, so the rest is grammatical cleanup. So this bolded. Let me just get rid of that. Okay, so this bolded section looks like the substantive addition compared to the language immediately below. So can I hear some reactions from the supplier community? Ms. McIntyre?
I don't think it's an issue.
Okay. We have one.
I mean, it seems redundant with the other section of the COMAR.
Mhm.
And the other thing you can't forget, and I don't remember where it is in the COMARs, but suppliers also have an obligation to notify the commission of the localities where agents are going to be, at least by the day of they're going to be there.
Right.
So that's already, from the timing perspective, it's already in there. So our strong preference is to keep it cleaner and leaner and not be redundant, because that's when you start raising questions. Is it different over here? Do you interpret them the same way? So I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I just think it's not necessary.
Okay. Thoughts? You have a response?
Again, it's mainly, almost a timing issue, because it's basically they can't permit the agent to conduct door-to-door until they have verified that the agent has the proper licensing. The other is much more passive in terms of they have to comply, but there's no sense of, that before a supplier even turns them on the street that they're in compliance.
I think that second language says the same thing. That's why I don't have an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that unless the door-to-door agent's agenda has been verified by government-issued identification, it's the same as saying the supplier has verified that the agent has met.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let me accept the addition of this language for now, since it seems like the key argument against it is a question about whether it's redundant, but it's not. It doesn't appear to be contrary to what's happening today, just perhaps redundant. So, in that instance, since we're making this change anyway, and the alternative, if I tell Miss Bowman that we can't accept it here, is that she's going to bring it up in the rulemaking. So let me, and then we'll have to, have the same discussion there. So I'm leaning is to incorporate this into this draft. And I'm open to hearing I'm open to hearing an argument against it in the draft, but know that it's going one of two ways. I'm either going to incorporate it or it's going to come up in rulemaking. So let me accept that addition. I'm not going to do it right here, but
One suggestion.
sure,
So,
please. Remind me of your name.
I'm Richie Hudson.
Richie Constellation. Thank you.
So instead of verified, if we could change that, the supplier has required the agent to meet any local licensing requirements. I just don't want to get into a debate over what an acceptable verification method is.
Agent to meet. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to insert this accept. Okay.
And the last thing on that page I'm withdrawing.
The only problem with switching it from verified to required is they could just have a form that says, do you meet the requirements? And then they're not checking. Like, if I'm applying for a position as an attorney, I'm assuming that that my prospective employer is going to contact, say, the Court of Appeals and verify that I actually have licensed practice law. So I think verified means that the supplier would be doing that, in a similar role, and not just having a form that says, we require you, as a condition of your employment, we require you to be. It doesn't really add anything if you put required. If you put verified, it does add this additional obligation on the supplier to say, oh, are you licensed to, do door-to-door in Howard County? And then say yes. Well, all right, then give me your, I don't know what it is. It's a,
Oops.
yeah,
Well, I think therein is the issue. We don't have a problem with this in substance, but if it
What did I do
were
here?
verified, then we're going to have a larger discussion about how.
What did I do here?
I
Okay.
could change it to until the supplier.
What did I do? Where am I?
Yeah.
Okay.
so
The supply.
Insured. Fine, too.
Let me, so, it does say immediately before that has been verified. So, and that was language that was,
that's the identity verification.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
I was making it
Yeah.
facts that they're verifying
Verified the agent.
their identification. They're doing the record check. They could also be they should also be verifying that they have the proper license.
Or the supplier has ensured that the agent has met any local licensing or registration.
I'm sure it is okay.
Yeah, that's acceptable.
Insured.
Has insured instead of
Verified is less than ensured.
supplier has ensured that the agent. All right. Well, the supplier is responsible for its agent regardless, right? So, let me. Okay. Supplier has insured. I don't know what is going on over here.
Because I have a general comment to this whole section, I guess the corresponding one on the outside.
Okay.
When we were talking about this, this was the idea was that we would make the similar requirements for like Uber drivers apply to these agents, and so that we used the law that was circulating, I don't know if it was at the General Assembly or elsewhere in Comar, the carrier provisions, and so I don't know. At the time we were considering this in RM 54 phase 2 and during the waiver period, we were using, I'm not sure if it was draft rulemaking or rulemaking, I'm not exactly sure, but I know it was in final regs, so I'm imagining that the commission will be curious to know whether...
How it aligns with the transportation. Yeah, my understanding is that this does align with the transportation. I ran it, I got this, now we let Annette leave, but I got this from her. So my understanding is that it does, but I will be happy to check again. Accept and confirm transportation. Okay, Mr. Chad, are you coming up to talk to me, or are you going somewhere else? Okay.
Yes, no, you need to change the number because you inserted a new section.
Oh, yeah, it's just duplicative. This one's going to go away. I just have to. I don't want to bore you with that right now. Thank you.
So Montgomery County Consumer Protection is suggesting just in that section to add, the supplier has ensured that the agency meet any local licensing, registration, or permitting requirements. So just adding the words "or permitting." Is that okay? All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go back to the website language now. We're lagging a little bit behind my agenda by 10 minutes, and I think this is gonna go a little bit longer. So I'm gonna go back up to the website section. So I'm on page 11 of the attachment 1. I think wait, did I work through all Risa's comments that I got? I think that recording. Yeah, we did that. Did that. Okay.
There's one on page, it's 5306, the cancellation of supply service one. Did you get that one?
5306 cancellation. 5306 what?
06.
530606.
Yeah, that's the one. I thought Eric had put a comment box on that. I don't see it on yours.
No, not that I got from him. Oh, he had caught. I had accidentally deleted something that should have stayed, and I fixed that already. It wasn't.
Point not duplicative.
Yeah. I got that. Okay. Let me go back to the website, which is page 11. So we've worked through Risa's. I have to duplicate what we've just talked about in gas, so I'll do that. Okay. So last time we received a straw proposal from OPC regarding some language to add to this website. If you recall, part of what I'm proposing to include in my work group report regarding the recommendation for Phase 3 is overhaul of the Commission's website as it pertains to customer choice. So with that in mind, we talked through, there were 3 additions in OPC's straw proposal. So clearly I have included just one of them here, and we're going to talk about why in my proposed path forward. So what is listed here as B was C in OPC's straw proposal last time. It is my understanding that the suppliers that are participating in the work group are prepared to accept this language, which holds a supplier to honoring terms that are on our website if they're more favorable to the customer. So hearing no objections, I'm amenable to including that language. Ms. McIntyre, that's incorrect. Yeah.
Bernice McIntyre, WGL Energy. One of the things I'm concerned about is what we talked about last time, which was that the Commission's website doesn't really easily enable suppliers to put offers on it and to update it. Is this going to go into effect after the website is changed such that there would be an easier access to enable this to happen? Because what you're doing is some of those problems may arise just because of an ability to post things on that website.
So from a practical perspective, by the time this regulation's effective, we may have completed our website review and overhaul, but that's like just from a practical perspective. There's nothing built into the reg as it's written to ensure that if you wanted to go that route, we would have to do something like what we did for the 3-day switching rule, where you request a waiver pending,
I think that would be a helpful thing to
Um,
put in there, because I think a lot of the issues around, other issues with having to post all prices, I think that's going to be a problem. But open prices, I think that makes sense. But if you can't post them, then then you're punished if the price is different because you couldn't post it. I don't think that's fair. So putting in a waiver, I think, would be helpful.
Okay, Jake, if
I'm because the waiver might not be necessary if this
Yeah.
Bernice is satisfied after the
website overhaul.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously a valid point, which is, I post, I'm a supplier, I post a price, and then I send the commission an updated price, and through no fault of my own, that price never gets reflected on the website, and I get, record numbers of enrollments on this old sale offer that I didn't intend to actually offer to the public. So, I mean, if we, if you wanted to add something that said, that B only takes effect, or B is subject to, the supplier submitted an updated offer to the commission website, but for whatever reason doesn't get posted, then the requirements of B do not go into effect, or something along those lines. But it might just be, better to wait and see if the suppliers are satisfied. As I understand it right now, what appears on the commission's website is really at the control of the supplier, because the supplier sends it and it updates the web. That's how I understand it.
That's how I understand it as well. But
And the commission can always waive this section of COMAR. So if there was ever a glitch like this, I can't imagine that the commission is going to enforce this provision if the reason that the offer wasn't updated on their website was no fault of the supplier.
suppliers. Yeah, it's kind of an affirmative defense, if you will.
But I don't mind adding it because I know that's what the commission would do if it didn't happen. So.
Adding what?
Adding an exception, it's going to make it a lot more wordy, and it might give the impression that there is more of a protection than there really is, because as a practical matter, I don't see this situation rising in practice. I don't think there's going to be a situation where the supplier made a good faith attempt to transmit the updated to the commission's website, and for some reason that did not.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd rather not add it and just explain in the record that like an affirmative defense is available, or a waiver.
Available, because I am not the person that posts, but we have had some issues with posting on the website. So I don't know what the issue is. I can't articulate it, but I do know when I raised this with our internal people that there were problems with posting on the Maryland Public Service Commission website.
What were the problems?
I'm sorry that I can't articulate that, but I can send you once I get, and I'll send an email to my folks to articulate for you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Does that, we're leaving it, the language is unchanged, but the report narrative will suggest the prospect of the affirmative defense and the availability of a supplier to request a waiver until the website overhaul is completed. Okay. So I've accepted this portion from OPC's straw proposal. There were two other additions in OPC's proposal, which I'm proposing to not include in the package that is appended to my work group report. The first was, and Jay can correct me if I'm wrong, or I can pull it up, but the first was, I think he wanted this to say all open offers, and then there was another one that talked about submitting posting the change within 24 hours of the decision being made. So I discussed this internally with some staff at the commission and reviewed the RM54 records. And the reason I'm declining to add all open offers is because my interpretation of the law and the practical implementation side of this is that suppliers could have hundreds of offers, but they're not all not every person is eligible for that open offer. So I don't read the law to say that each and every single offer available, but rather I think this codifies what the statute says, and I think our IT department has expressed some concern about having to host 200 suppliers with 200 offers each. So that's why I've declined to insert all. Anyone that disagrees is welcome to disagree in their comments with me, but I think I'm moving forward without including that. So B, which said that it had to be submitted within 24 hours, I've also declined to include, but for a different reason, and that harkens back to one of the attachments to your, to my email from last week, which was a proposed letter, and I can pull that up on the screen. So I think it accomplishes the idea of this letter. If I can find let's see, what attachment was this? Draft supplier letter, yeah. Okay, so the idea here is that the commission already has, so the language that's, where are you going? I'm just, I'm just kidding. Bye. Okay, so the language as it states right now says that, that offers have to be posted according to directions that the commission provides. And my understanding from the RM54 record was that was purposely left a little vague because the directions the commission provides could change as our IT system develops, et cetera, and that obviously it's harder to do a rulemaking than it is to change something posted on the commission's website. So I did a little digging and found that the web portal that you have to sign up for, and this deals with how it is today, when you register, the commission has provided directions that require updated offers to be submitted within 3 days of a change. So I get that 3 days is longer than 24 days, but it's speaks to the same point. So what I am proposing to do to address the concern flagged by OPC, and it's a good one, is to send out this letter or some form thereof, rather than taking away the commission's discretion as I view it, which is to make these kind of changes to our directions without having to go through a rulemaking. I would propose to send this letter, and we don't have to wait for my report. I can get them to do this immediately, and it would go out to all electric suppliers and remind them the language from the law says that at least monthly, and then at least monthly open offers have to be submitted, and the commission has refined that with the directions here. That's my proposal. I can take edits to this. I can recommend we submit it or issue it immediately, but let me hear from OPC, please.
So I think, even in the edited version, there's some benefit to including some. I appreciate that you've added this to the proposed rules. I think that there is a function that is performed by COMAR that we need to recognize, and I know that there's this idea like we don't want to make the regulations too wordy. We don't want to, have regulations do more than we need them to do. But the fact is that the letter doesn't have the force of law, and which leads. It might sound good from the supplier's perspective or from other parties' perspective, but it really is a bad thing because the obligation already exists. The General Assembly has required the suppliers to do it. So I think, and I also note that this letter says any open offer, which I think is essentially has the same meaning as all open offers. So I think by not putting in COMAR in black and white, you could lead to different interpretations by different suppliers, or at least make different suppliers feel more comfortable about considering an offer not an open offer, or just one. They have many open offers, so we're only going to provide a sampling to the commission. In the past, OPC has actually opposed not having every single offer. So even if there was a special offer that was being offered to like U of M alumni, that should be was done on the website. I'm not sure that we're as intensely focused on that situation as we are on the idea of an actual open offer to a residential customer in a given service territory. That offer should be on the Commission's website, in our opinion, regardless of whether that is the 200th active offer unless the Commission wants to impose limits on how many offers the supplier can have at any given time. I'm not sure that that there would ever be 200. That seems a little outrageous. But some suppliers certainly do have maybe dozens when by including environmental focused products with variable products, or doing like fixed variable hybrid contracts that have a fixed component and a variable component. But the idea is that the Commission's website is supposed to act as a sort of clearinghouse for consumers to refer to when they're making an initial decision to explore whether to choose a supplier at all. It gives them an easy one-stop place to get key pieces of information, such as the price that current suppliers are offering. Now, whether the updates to that offer need to be submitted within 24 hours or 72, it might seem minor. I mean, in my opinion, the 24 hours provides this focusing it will make suppliers realize that when they are making an offer active, sending their marketers out to make that offer, or updating their web page to reflect the new offer, that at the same time as they do that, they should also notify the Commission. And I think when if you give an extended period of time, I think what you're going to see is some suppliers meaning to having every intention to update the offer on the website, but for whatever reason, because they have this buffer period, they don't, and then you have the problems that the website currently suffers from, which is there's a lot of stale information on there. So, like I said, I think even removing those aspects, I think would provide some improvements. But if we're really trying to get at what the General Assembly was intending, I think having it be all or any open offer, and requiring that update to occur in as near to real time as we can is a very sensible thing to do. And frankly, I don't see it being a burden, because again, the decision to have the offer be made to residential customers, and the terms of that offer are already going to have been made at that point. And this obligation that is being imposed is simply to notify the Commission through this web portal that offer is now active and may replace a previous offer that the supplier had. And I think we should be focused not only on whether we're putting restrictions on suppliers as much as we are also COMAR is informing suppliers as to what their obligations are under the law. And it seems to me that between the combination of the statute and the letter, a lot of what we're saying is what the rules are right now, but COMAR doesn't really reflect it. And it's cleaner to have the regulation reflected, because a supplier presumably is certainly going to check there to see what their obligations are. They might not have that letter, or the person who did the web updating is no longer with the company, and there's not a very efficient way to flag letters that are imposing from the Commission that are imposing a special obligation that exists outside of COMAR. I mean, if the Commission considers the letter to be an obligation on the supplier, which I'm sure it does, then I don't see why there would be and if suppliers don't have a problem with the requirements that are in that letter, I'm not sure what the problem is with having it be reflected in COMAR. And frankly, if you do that, then I understand some aspects of the letter, because some of the aspects of the letter are probably how they actually physically access the web portal, and that might change. Maybe you're going to add a new security protocol or something like that. So of course, that's not going to be reflected in COMAR. But the underlying basic obligation to update that information accurately and in real time, I think, frankly, should be reflected in COMAR.
Okay. Thanks. I understand and appreciate what you're saying. I think where I'm coming down is that the statute, as I read it, requires a monthly updating. So, certainly we're free to go beyond the statute, and I think we have. and then it has this language that require. I mean, I pulled the language in the letter directly from Comar, which says that the terms of any open offers. So I get the any, but I think like that there's some additional things to be said about the fact that further up in the regulations, and now I just lost it. So I mean, any and all, like, I think it's kind of selective where any and all are posted. I mean, right here it just says open offer. So, I mean, I can make an argument with a straight face that open offers can be defined as anything that's open and to people that are generally eligible to it. I think we're going to, obviously we disagree on this point. So I expect that you'll, Mr. Auslander, make the same arguments for the commission in the rulemaking, and I would encourage you to do so. I think that I'm going to have to move forward with the proposal that I've put forth today, which picks one piece up from your straw proposal, but I'm declining to pick up the other two pieces just because my understanding of how the commission feels about its discretion in not wanting to put into regulations, something that could need to be changed based on how we move forward with our technology. So I hear your points. I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that point. And this is my proposed path forward. I'm happy. I mean, I think irrespective of that, there's an argument that can be made about this letter going out, no matter how we came out on this issue. So I'm happy to recommend that we do so immediately and not wait for the rulemaking, or if you'd rather wait for the rulemaking and have it go out. If there's edits to this letter, like, I'm happy to take any of that. But I think this, you'll have to repeat those arguments in your comments. Are there, please.
Yeah, so just a question. Has the commission in any prior documents articulated any opinion as to what constitutes an open offer?
The question is whether the commission has opined on what constitutes an open offer. I think that my recollection of the RM54 transcripts was that there was some brief discussion of what constituted an open offer, but to my knowledge, we have not issued an order or otherwise defined open offer, like in a binding document. But we could review the transcript for RM54 for that discussion. Are there any other comments on this page? Because this is what will be going in my report. Okay. Y'all, we're 30 minutes behind my agenda now. So the next piece, the last piece on these regs that I wanted to work through today was the budget billing, which was accepted into my document from, where is it? From OPC straw proposal.
5.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, so it's just this one page. OPC presented last time their straw proposal, which was to add regulations. The budget billing section that exists today speaks to requirements that are placed on the utilities in their provision of budget billing. And if I understand it correctly, that the language that's been recommended for us is to mirror that same requirements on the supplier side. So we had, I think Mr. Auslander admitted last time that that may not translate exactly. So I think we need to hear from suppliers about if there's something that doesn't translate exactly between the utilities to the suppliers and budget billing. But otherwise, it didn't seem like there was an objection to moving forward with this concept. It's just about getting the language right regarding how to do this. So, for my supplier friends in the room, like, we're looking for your feedback here now that you've had. Yep. This was attachment 1 to my email. So it was page 5 of my email. My email that went out last Wednesday or whenever that.
It's direct.
Yeah, I haven't changed from. It was circulated on November 22nd. Page 5 of attachment 1 circulated on November 22nd. It's also up on the screen.
So I think from my perspective, generally speaking, 1 and 3 seem pretty straightforward. I guess the concern that I would flag would just be on number 2. You know, obviously there's a bunch of suppliers in this room, including myself, who want supplier consolidated billing. So in the future, this issue may be more applicable. But under the way that billing is working today, we have bill-ready utilities where we pass just the billed amount, and so all of this detail on number 2 is not something that we have the ability to, I don't think, from the utilities perspective, accommodate.
Okay, when you say bill ready, there's a second option, right? It's bill ready or
Not for all
rate ready?
utilities.
Okay, but our utilities, according to your tariffs, are bill ready? Like, where does the bill ready come from?
So, well, I think that's where it is,
It's
right?
in the
And
tariff.
Utilities can correct me. It's in
Okay.
their tariff that
Okay.
they offer bill ready, with the exception, I think, of Potomac Edison, which has rate ready also.
Okay, so
My only point is just trying to figure out how this, since this is in the competitive electric supply section of the rule, we're not doing the billing, and there's this detail that's supposed to be shown on the bill. I guess that's the concern that I have, is just making sure, you know, what are we supposed to do with that? Because
Sure.
the system doesn't actually accommodate us, I don't think.
bill messaging.
Messaging.
Okay, so
Is there enough messaging space? Huh?
The bill message would be for all the customers. Customer specific.
And bill ready, I'm talking
And
bill ready. Yeah,
bill ready.
4 lines, 80 characters.
Okay. 4 lines, 80 characters, and bill ready. So what I'm hearing is that our utilities, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, through their tariffs, are bill ready and not rate ready. And if you're bill ready, you only get 4 lines to do this, and that probably will not accommodate this level of detail. So perhaps, I'm just going to throw this out here, what if we revise this to say something like, there are going to be situations in which the supplier could be responsible for the monthly bill. For example, if the commission moves forward with supplier consolidated billing. So there may be situations in which this would become applicable, so maybe there's some value to leaving it in. So is there a way to refine the language in number 2 to say something like, to the extent that it's a rate-ready situation, or if the supplier is otherwise responsible for issuing the bill, then the monthly bill shall state? Anyone want to see that written out? Tony.
Mr. Tony Casati, IGS Energy. One suggestion might be is for the elements in number 2, if supplier consolidated billing petition was in fact approved, we can include those elements in that petition in that order. And we'd be obligated as a supplier to include those elements in our bill.
Okay. OPC, your reaction to that?
Well, certainly if that's the case, then we would expect that would be the rule, but
Uh-huh.
we would still have the gap that exists because suppliers aren't going to be required, even if there is supplier consolidated billing, they're not going to be required to provide it. And even if they do provide it, they don't have to provide it to all of their customers. So you're still going to have a situation where some suppliers, for some of their customers, are taking it, full advantage of their right to offer budget billing to customers, but they're not being, they're not being held subject, at least explicitly, to the same requirements that are required for utilities, and it's leading to a situation where they're, under budget billing, you're essentially undercharging or by definition, you're undercharging or overcharging a customer for a period of time, and you're going to true up later. And there's no explicit requirement that makes it clear to suppliers what they need to communicate to the customer on an ongoing basis, which is different than the case for utilities. Utilities are required to provide.
But is that true? Because what I just heard behind me is that not necessarily, that's not a...
So a utility right now has to provide information to the customer to let them know how far over or behind their account.
Okay, so let me ask you this, though, Jakes. Do you have a solution? So here's what I'm hearing is the problem, is that since the majority of our utilities have, they're bill ready under their tariffs, and there's only 4 lines to do, 80 characters to do messaging, I'm having a hard time understanding how suppliers would comply with this.
So under bill ready, I can only send one charge that appears on a bill. Is that how bill ready works?
Mr. Mike McShane, you've been quiet.
I've been talking gas too much. So to break down too, the budget billing amount due for the month.
Yep.
Okay, that's the charge the supplier sends.
Yep.
So that's a given. The customer's actual usage for the month, the utility provides that on the bill, so that's actually given.
But that may not actually be the actual if the utility itself has estimated the customer's meter.
Well, right, but it's the only usage information provided that period for the customer, for both the supplier and for
the utility.
so
Okay.
it's actual usage from that perspective if it's estimated.
Okay.
It's noted. The cost of electric commodity services for actual usage for the month. So that's the issue, really. And what's happened, and again, it doesn't take that much space on the bill message to provide that. It's basically what's the rate that's effective for that supplier, and then how much the actual charge would have been. And then the last item is just what's the cumulative over or under. And again, OPC brought most of this in prior rulemaking sessions to the attention of those groups where suppliers didn't provide this information, and then there was a large overage due the supplier at the end of a month's period or a year's period or multiple years period.
Yeah, I understand the problem.
So again, the 80 characters times 4 message fields, and we see this from other suppliers.
80 characters per line, 4 lines of 80 characters
Correct,
each.
that's right.
Okay, so if C and D are the only new items that would have to be captured in that 4 lines, 80 characters each, then maybe Bill Ready does have room to comply with this. I just need to hear from the utilities. I think I heard some confusion about whether the message could be unique or applied to a subset of customers, or if the message is uniform for all customers.
No, that was my question.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Atkins.
So for Pepco and Delmarva, we do have the bill message and then a regulatory message. And they are not unique to each customer. What you see on one bill, you're going to see on all 2,000 bills.
Okay.
But we do have 20 lines where customer suppliers can send in line item descriptions. And I don't think each one has to be unique for like a dollar amount. You could say, this is your budget bill balance, this is your budget bill overage, and it wouldn't go into your TDS total for the bill. I think it can be just a simple line item description. I have to verify with EDI on our side if we can handle that, but I think that's correct.
So those would be unique to...
Because you send it over, you have 20 lines to send over for your bill ready charges. So one line can be your charges for the bill, one line can be here's your budget bill, one line can be your budget bill overage or underage, one can be your total, I don't know, however you all do, I don't know. But there's 20 lines for you all to send over on a monthly bill.
Okay.
That is unique for every customer.
20 lines?
I think we
Yes.
have to be careful too, because some utilities might be 12.
Yeah.
Some might be 20.
Yeah, PHI is 20
Might
lines.
be 4 lines of bill messaging, we might be 2, but these are things that exist.
Yeah.
They might be different.
Isn't that
in the bill message, or is that in the charge?
It's in the actual, it's your charges. So here's your total charge for the month, and the next line is this. If it, for example, if it was time of use, on peak, off peak, intermediate peak, total.
Okay.
So it is there for you to do that type of specification for budget billing.
Okay.
So we would need 2 additional lines, or 2 additional items, and that's in C and D. So that's where PEPCO and Delmarva. PE is rate ready, so you could do this anyway, right? Where?
We have rate ready and bill.
Rate ready and bill ready. Okay, Mr. McShane spoke for gas, and that sounded okay for gas. Bill, do you have electric? And Terry? Yep,
From
W-
Washington Gas.
Okay.
The suppliers don't have option of budget for Maryland because it's POR. We purchase it, so it's our budget. So they send us in the actual charges. That's what we pay them. They don't have anything to do with the budget.
There is no budget billing option in Washington Gas for suppliers.
They can't. So for Bill Ready, they have to send in actual charges. They can't send a budget amount. We take the charges and roll the budget. So they can't utilize a budget option with us.
Okay, so there should be no suppliers in Washington Gas offering budget billing.
No, not for firm customers, no.
Not for firm. Okay. Smecco, where'd Mark go? Or, oh God. Tammy? Okay. Tammy Gardner, please.
And we do the same thing that she just described.
Okay.
Budget billing's on our side.
A budget billing is on Smecco's side of the house.
That's correct.
Okay.
However, we are bill ready, and we do have 12 lines.
12 lines,
So that if we
bill
did
ready.
go to supplier
Supplier
budget
comes
billing,
on.
that they could accommodate that.
Okay. Understood. Do I have any utilities that I've not heard from? Well, no Chop Tank in there. Have you heard Chop? Well, they don't have. Do they supply? I don't know. Laurel, please.
Hi, this is Laurel Peltier. I have one addition. Could there be language included in this regulation that a supplier can't use the term budget billing unless it utilizes this exact pricing paradigm? And I ask because I've seen on actual bills, budget billing I've seen it used for like a minimum charge.
Sure.
So is there a way to codify that so that just the terminology can't be used for something else so that it's confusing to customers?
Yeah, so let me ask OPC and any of my other legal friends. I feel my reaction to that is if we codify this language as suggested, it would be subject to this. I mean, any phrase budget billing would have to comply with these regulate. I mean, that's my reaction. What's yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be deceptive if you're calling something budget billing and not including like an asterisk saying, "Oh, our budget billing means something that's not what
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
require."
Yeah, I'm just asking because if this goes through and it goes through as a regulation, would then the current companies who are using this terminology, like I think there needs to be just.
They'd have to comply as soon as
and they have to change that the way they're doing it now.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously OPC's concern is the behavior, whether you call it
whatever you call it, yeah.
Alternative payment or.
I have full confidence in your abilities once these are enacted.
Yeah, I mean,
to
I will
make
say,
those
even right now, not all utilities even use the term budget billing.
Yeah.
But they do follow the rules.
Yep.
Budget billing, they just call it something different.
Yeah. Okay. So, based on the discussion that we've had here, my leaning is to leave this intact. It seems that A and B are, and we're talking under 2 now, A and B are already provided on the bill, and C and D we're talking about, I don't know, less than 100 extra characters, and I haven't heard anyone outline anything that would prohibit compliance with this from the utility side of the house. All right. Is there anything else to discuss on this section? All right. Well then, we are 48 minutes past the agenda item. So before we move on, that was everything that I wanted to cover in the proposed regulations attachment 1. I already heard from Miss Bowman. It looks like Mr. McShane. Bill, are you getting up? Nope. Nope, talk to me. If you shout at me, I'll repeat it.
Just very minor on page 33. The title should say competitive gas.
Page 33.
Or 31.
31. That was your one mistake. Just kidding. Competitive what?
Gas.
Gas. Oh, haha. Okay. Any other comments on the package of regulations that were circulated as attachment 1?
Christina Montgomery, can we go back to budget billing for a second?
No.
Okay. And we'll just put it in our comments. Their last sentence about amortization, it seems that there are no limits or parameters around how long that overcharge is amortized.
Yeah, I think this was copied from the utilities, so I don't think there's limits there. Where you, wait, I can go to what section are those there? 5305.
I think that what this probably means is I don't have to zero out your account at the end of the budget billing period. We can enter into a new budget billing period, and I can, if you suddenly owe $500, I don't have to. The utility and or supplier doesn't have to say you have to pay up to $500. We can allow you to pay that $500 back over time.
Yeah, but I guess the question is without limits. In Pennsylvania, there are limits according to the amount over how many months. Without limits, presumably you could say you have $100 charge and you want to amortize it over 24 months, which I think we would agree may not make sense.
No, it's a good point. Like I pointed out, I just included because I copy and pasted.
Where did it come from?
From the USPP regulations. So I'm sure I have a citation handy, but it's in Title 31 probably.
30.
It's like 31, and it's the last section.
31.
Yeah.
105.
And then it should be.
Is it defined?
It's equal monthly payment plans. So it's 6. If you scroll down, it's less.
Yeah, it just says the excess may be amortized over future monthly payments.
So is there a definition section earlier in that whole section?
Which word are you trying to find?
Well, I think what Christina found was amortized. It was the amortization.
I don't think
defined.
Arrearage.
And then this is under the universal service, but there's also a section in the COMARS that relates to just budget billing.
Yeah, that's the section that we're in right now.
So that section for the utilities doesn't currently define an amortization period?
I think the reason that I pulled the language from the USP is that the utility budget billing
It's covered in tariffs, I think. Yeah, and you guys don't have tariffs. So the USPP was the thing to model it off. I can change that. There's no reason. I think we're just exploring why it says what it says. But if you have an improvement, I think
especially if you're saying that another jurisdiction has something like this, that they put a further limitation on it.
Over. I don't know.
Something.
What about 36?
Yeah, I mean, in Pennsylvania, it says if it's over $100 but less than $300, it could be at the request of the customer, amortized over a 6-month period. Over $300, amortized over a 12-month period at the request of the customer. Shorter amortization periods are permissible. So I think we could go back and submit. I hate to agree to something. I don't think Risa talked about it, but I think we could submit some period of time.
It's actually a great suggestion because there's always problems. Oh, you have a $5,000 overcharge. You're going to amortize it over a period of time that doesn't make economic sense.
What if I just say no more? I know that you want to go back, but what if I just say over no more than...
No more than 12 months?
Okay. 12. Wait, do I have to spell this out?
Yeah, at the customer, at the request of the customer.
That's a good addition too.
Well, I still need future, right? 12 future monthly payments, comma, at the request of the customer.
Well, does that mean that the customer has to permanently select their amortization period? That would be difficult to implement.
And what happens if they cancel the supplier contract when they're in their amortization? Definitely a great suggestion, but I'm just wondering how that would work.
They would still owe the debt.
What'd you say?
They would still owe the debt.
Yeah, and it would just be, there would be no more, but this is saying that they can amortize it at their request, but I guess it's subject to them implied requirement that they maintain the supplier contract.
Yeah, I'm feeling okay about inserting no more than 12. My reticence about like expanding on that here to mirror like the level of detail it sounds like Pennsylvania has, or like the level of detail that's in the tariffs, is that I think that just gets like way too detailed for these regulations, because clearly the tariffs across the utilities differ in some respects. So I'd rather just say over no more than 12 future monthly payments, if 12 sounds like a reasonable number to those participating. Because I take the point, I think it's a good one, but I'd rather just kind of find a solution now. Okay.
I'm sorry, I stepped out, so I may have missed something, but this would require the customer to stay with that supplier for, if, say this recalculation occurs at the eight-month mark.
I don't think it requires. I think the discussion up here is that is saying, okay, so the question is, does this language lock in the customer to stay with the supplier for the remainder of that amortization period? Is that the question?
Well, it's either that, or they're going to get hit. Well, the issue that we've come across are these large amounts that are due, and it typically shows up.
Right.
When the customer has contacted the supplier for a drop.
Right. And so
How does this solve that if it's changed and there's only 4 months left?
Right. So I don't think that it's designed to solve it necessarily. I think it's designed to limit the customer's exposure. I'm not sure that we're going to solve it without like prohibiting suppliers from doing budget billing altogether. And then I get in a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Although it's the easiest solution. But my understanding is that we need to walk a fine line about. I mean, we can't regulate the commodity or get it. So I'm trying to navigate a solution that's palatable. And so my read of this is that it limits exposure. It doesn't solve the issue.
And it also will limit suppliers from engaging in this as like an actual part of their business practice. Using the budget billing amount in a way that is detrimental to the competitive market.
Okay.
As far as your suggestion, yeah, it wouldn't require the customer to stay with the supplier, but it would require the customer to stay with the supplier if they want to take advantage of.
Yes.
But I mean, that's how it. Without saying that, then they could just get hit right away with the entire balance and have no option whatsoever. This at least imposes a requirement on suppliers to allow customers to do this, right? With subject to them remaining.
I guess I just wonder if they're at least once a year is just so broad, right? If I'm a supplier and
That's what the
USPP says.
Yeah, utility. In practice, I think the utilities actually recalculate.
They can't switch from us. They're locked from us, right?
But we do at least do like what? I think we do 2 true ups or 2 reviews
Right,
per year.
we do. I think quarterly.
I mean, if you want to do it quarterly, obviously that's better. But like I said, I tried to make Marissa's job as easy as possible by borrowing language that is reflected in COMAR and thus has been vetted, albeit in a different context, to accomplish a similar purpose.
Yeah. Okay. Following that logic, I'd like to tweak it as little as possible. I mean, if this is palatable to the suppliers participating in the, like, if I can move forward on an unopposed path, that would be my preference on this piece. Okay.
What would be the implementation time after the regs are adopted?
I think we spelled that out in a. Oh no, the implementation tariff that we had is for seamless moves and instant connects.
Well, if experience is any guide, no matter what period is reflected in any proposed regulations, the utilities and or suppliers are going to ask for an additional
Yeah.
12 months.
So the implementation timeline, unless we specify or unless a waiver is requested, you're expected to comply once the regs are finalized. From a practical perspective, that would be, God, like 9 months from now. 9 months from whenever these are filed. If you need an implementation timeline for this aspect that is longer than 9 months, and that's a common concern across the suppliers, then I can either insert a section here, like a numeral 4, that says, implementation plans should be filed within. Well, that wouldn't apply to you guys. You'd have to seek a waiver, I think, if you need longer than the rulemaking process.
I think Risa will come back with a proposal regarding implementation time because some of these changes will require back office DEI changes.
Okay, totally fair. So if you could model that proposal, there's language earlier in this draft that speaks about an implementation time for the seamless moves and instant connects. If you could just use that language as the basis for your suggestion, that would be helpful. And if I could get that, as soon as possible. Okay, Mr. Trout.
This time I'm actually standing up to say something. So this language would apply to a supplier budget billing plan.
Correct.
It would not apply to the utility collection of receivables that it's purchased from a supplier under purchase of receivables. Is that correct?
That's how I read the proposed language.
Okay.
Is that
so this is not a backdoor changing the language you had up earlier in 2031, 2031-06, because 2031-06 gives us discretion to work with the customers on payment plans.
right? I think this is separate than the payment plan issue, but not
Well,
supplanting
the
it,
language
right?
you've put in with the limitations on amortization,
No more.
that would
than-
only apply if it's the supplier that's collecting the money, not if it's the utility that has bought the supplier's receivable and is now the utility collecting the money. I just want to be very, very clear.
It would still apply to you if just you wouldn't collect the charge. Let's say at the end of the 12-month period, I have $1,000. This thing got out of whack. I have $1,000. They could break that up into 12 monthly payments on it, in addition to whatever they're charging me for, ongoing and future usage. And then you, the utility, would collect that, in 1/12 installments as the supplier includes it when you purchase the receivables.
Putting aside all the other issues with that, for us to have to maintain two different sets of procedures, one with respect to our collection on the POR.
I don't see where it would change. Instead of them saying the customer leaves and the customer has a $1,200, they owe the supplier $1,200 because they've been using more than they paid.
Right.
They would not, in today's world, they would include that $1,200 charge or that final charge for them serving that customer.
Right.
What we're talking about is that instead of doing that, they would put $100 over the next 12 months. We would never. You're absolutely correct. If they included that $1,200 charge, and then the customer contacted them, then there are all sorts of issues because once that charge hits BGE, we paid the supplier the $1,200 via POR. 5 days at the end of that.
Yeah.
Bill period.
That's exactly my
happens,
concern,
then
though.
yes, this doesn't apply.
Yeah, so the balance that you've already purchased from the supplier, balance, you as a utility have full authority to do payment plans, and you're no longer in this section.
That's what I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure. Everybody is in agreement that this is intended to bind and limit the discretion to work with the customer of the supplier, not to change the discretion of the utility to work in collecting balances that have
That you've
reverted to the utility.
purchased. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Then I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
I mean, if you would like to add that into your comments to preserve the record, I think that that's perfectly fine. But that's my understanding of what's going on here.
Yep.
Mr. Young.
Yeah, Brett Young, Potomac Edison. So, I think there's a couple things here.
Okay.
Bill ready, I think a lot of it falls on the supplier to have to utilize some of the functions available, like submitting additional charge lines or using their bill messaging to meet these requirements. And then if they stuck with them, they'd have to send those incremental charges via bill ready. Through rate ready, if they stay with the supplier and say there's a $1,000 charge sitting out there, we don't really have the ability to collect a supplemental amount on rate ready. It's just what their monthly charge would be. So I don't.
When you do rate ready, when a supplier does budget billing for rate ready,
Yeah.
are you calculating the budget bill?
Mhm.
Well, then it shouldn't. Then it's all. This shouldn't apply then, right? It's
Yeah.
out of whack.
I would argue that situation is what WG, Washington Gas and SMECO have said, where budget billing is happening on your side of the house, and it falls to your tariff.
Yeah.
I think this pertains basically to
Bill ready. This, yeah.
not rate ready.
Okay.
But even if they're on rate ready, that doesn't.
But if they're on rate ready, isn't that part of your recalculation that you do
Yeah,
periodically throughout the year? Yeah. So then this wouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
I'm just gonna have to remember this 5 years from now.
Oh, I'm not being here 5 years from now. He can be here for.
I'll be retired.
Yeah.
Somebody will have to remember.
Okay. Well, okay. I mean, we can do, a couple things here. If, it would make people more comfortable for me to articulate in my work group report that this is contemplating, bill ready situation is not intended to interfere with the utility's ability to make payment plans, okay. Okay. All right. Anything else before we leave attachment 1? All right. Hopefully I have not hopefully I have allotted an appropriate amount of time to the next agenda item. Okay, so the next thing that we had to look at was the final review of the implementation guidelines, which we went through last time. I just wanted to give people, remember, these are meant to be high-level guidance documents that the utilities can build off of to make their implementation plans. So there's seamless moves guidance for electric and gas, and then there's instant connect guidance for electric companies. Are there any outstanding comments on these? Because if not, this is intended to be appended to my report, so it will be discussed in the rulemaking, but not, put into regs, obviously. Ms. Bowman.
This is a question in under 1A3.
Okay.
So the utility informs the customer that the supplier service is going to move.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens, if the customer says, "Wait a minute, I don't really want to do that,"
Mm-hmm.
what happens?
Then it's not processed. So we had this discussion last time where we contemplated adding like a fifth or sixth step that would be like an affirmative ask, and so we've removed that because the whole concept of a seamless move is that's not a request, and that there's no like affirmative action, but like there's the ability of the customer, if they either don't meet the eligibility requirements or if they, in response to this information, say, no, I don't want to do that, then the utility doesn't process the seamless move, and we've had the section added into the regs that prohibit early termination fees from applying to a customer that has not processed the seamless move.
So then I guess, so the concern for me is if, and again, it's a very subtle one, that if the customer says, well, I don't know if I want to do this, and the utility says, well, this is what's happening. I don't have to, I mean, I am concerned about the check when the customer says, I didn't really want to do this. They told me I had to do this.
So, Mr. Young, maybe if I could call you out, only because you have the most experience. From my understanding is that there are call scripts from that the utilities. So, Mr. Young works for a company that has an affiliate in Pennsylvania that does this, and they're customer call scripts. And my guess is that they have an answer to that situation that she's just suggested, which is that a customer, so the utility informs the customer that the supply service is moving to their new location, and the customer says, I don't think I want that. Tell me there's a response in the customer call script.
Yeah, so if the customer doesn't want it, I'm not sure exactly what the script is, but they have the ability to cancel it prior to that ever taking place. If that was your concern, or are you more looking for
the actual language we would use? Although I guess it is the utility who's having the conversation, right?
Yes.
So the utility wouldn't have an incentive to switch somebody who doesn't want to switch, or to move somebody who doesn't want to move,
No.
right? Okay.
There's no incentive.
I withdraw my question.
Okay, so to close the loop on that, like the implementation plans that are filed in response to all this would presumably have customer call scripts, which I'm sure you have a chance to review. Any other questions, comments, or feedback on this document? Okay. We did not make up time. That was 5 minutes. Okay, so we have 3 items left on the agenda. It's almost 3:15. You are not in luck because my husband's picking up the kids today, which means I am staying until this is done. So don't forget you can go to the bathroom. I'm not taking a break. This was your break. Okay, so the next item on here is the electronic customer account lookup tool, or wallet enrollment. So the reason it's labeled that way on here is if to catch everybody up to speed with where we are. We've talked through this several times. There's been a couple iterations of this. I had a hypothetical. We threw out that hypothetical. Then last time we spent a lot of time discussing what a lookup tool would look like. I assigned homework to the utilities about, I was looking for high-level estimates of cost estimates for an electronic account lookup tool that had the functionality of a supplier or its agent logging into a secure portal using a password, and then they could type in the customer's name and address, and in response, they would receive the choice ID or account number, or a smart response saying, indicating what was incorrect, like whether the name or address was incorrect. So that was what we talked through last time, and maybe some of the utilities have some information to share about like high-level cost estimates for implementing such a tool. In the meantime, so the I don't want to say I don't know what the right word is, not problem, but so like the objective that we were trying to accomplish with this lookup tool was an enhancement to the choice market that would facilitate like a I don't know, easier, or it would remove barriers to enrolling a customer if you're out in public and you don't have your bill. And right now we require choice ID or account numbers to enroll. And so the lookup tool was a way to address that situation. But I've heard overwhelmingly that that's not like the preferred solution of the supplier community, and that the preference is to pursue the wallet enrollment. Clearly, those are two divergent paths, the wallet enrollment, and I'm sure there's a more articulate way to describe this, but basically it allows you to just enroll with information in your wallet. So we'd be getting away from the concept of an account number or choice ID as a prerequisite to enrolling a customer. So those are, two different paths. I'd like to have a discussion about the latter, since we have not had that discussion yet. Clearly we're at the end of this phase, so I will talk about like next steps after we've had this conversation. But what I'd like to do today is open with, if there are any utilities that haven't answered in my homework assignment, I'd like to start there, and then I'd like to move into a discussion about wallet enrollments. I know that there wasn't a lot of time between our last meeting and today. Is there any utility that has a high-level cost estimate for the electronic lookup tools that they could offer? $1 million? Yeah, okay. Okay. So it would be costly. That's what we're going to go with. So clearly we don't want to, okay, where I'm sitting, I don't want to keep pushing a lookup tool if it's going to cost money and it's not going to address the perceived, barrier. Like I don't want to keep doing that if, okay, you get the point. So let's have a discussion about wallet enrollments. I can turn it over to a supplier to begin with if you have a further refinement to my inarticulate explanation of what it is. If you'd like to offer brief synopsis of the proposal, and then we can turn it over to our other friends and the utilities to see implementation concerns, legal concerns, consumer advocates if you have concerns. But if I could turn it over to a supplier to make a brief presentation, that would... Sure, please. Account lookup tool.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with you. I mean, so from Constellation's perspective, we certainly were in alignment with the RISA position. I think there would be a lot of value in implementing an enroll with your wallet functionality, but I don't want to abandon the idea of an incremental improvement to develop a web-based version of what the utilities are effectively already doing today through their IVR process. I think that was the genesis behind RISA's proposal maybe 2 or 3 working groups ago when RISA put forward a write-up for an account number lookup feature modeled after a settlement that was executed in AEP Ohio's service territory. The costs, I don't have the details in front of me, but the supplier cost was $5,000 one-time fee per supplier.
Was this something done when I was the leader? This isn't ringing a bell.
We submitted it.
It was an earlier proposal we submitted. I think it was in the first proposal.
Okay, I have to go back and look. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Right. So from our perspective, we do see value in, I want to go on record, not, agreeing with the total abandonment of the account number lookup functionality, especially since enroll with your wallet, as you've already mentioned, is likely to implicate the EDI processes. It's likely to be a longer implementation time. And from our perspective, modeling it after the settlement that was executed in Ohio, it seemed like a pretty easy lift. The costs were, like I said, $5,000 per supplier. I don't know, there's maybe 20 or 30 suppliers operating in that service territory. Not all would actually participate, so it was not a $1 to $2 million price tag in that situation.
Thank you. Mr. Atkins or any other utilities familiar with that settlement or want to respond? I have not gone to wallet enrollment.
Okay,
Is this
good.
okay.
This is for the account lookup tool.
Okay.
We are in agreement that that would be the preferred method for us. We did contact PICO, and for them to implement, it took them 6 months and around $300,000 to implement that. So we think our budget should be somewhere around that amount. We don't have the exact figures yet for you.
Oh,
Hopefully
that's,
we will get
yeah.
those to you.
And PICO, did they do something where the suppliers pay? I mean, cost recovery is a separate issue,
I don't know about that
but
issue. I don't know about what PICO did.
okay, but like it was 300. It was a one-time $300,000.
Correct. It took them 6 months to implement.
Okay.
So that is our preferred.
Thank you. Does anyone else have that level of information to share? I'm not going to hold you to this, by the way. I just.
All right. Brett Young, Potomac Edison.
Yeah.
Don't have the exact number. I mean, in PA, I don't believe it was overly expensive or overly burdensome to implement. Obviously, if we were to do the same thing in Maryland, it would be much cheaper, or if not, very easy to do. Where you start getting into some of the increased costs and where I'd need to get back with IT is if we start looking down the road of the smart responses. I know last time when I spoke about what we do in Pennsylvania, we had supplier concerns about basically trying, because you have to get the name and address perfect.
Yeah.
And part of that, we look at as a consumer protection piece to make sure that you are, who you say you are when you're putting in that information. But if required to have, increased or improved functionality around, hey, you put in this address and this name, the address is correct, but this is not the tenant or, this is not the name associated with this address.
Yep.
Or vice versa. That wouldn't be, there would be cost to do that, but it wouldn't be as much as if you're having to turn around and say, okay, you're using drive instead of DR versus road versus spelling it out.
Right.
Once you get to that level of smart response, then you're talking bigger money, and that's what I'd still have to get from IT.
Okay, that's helpful. But you didn't have like a 300,000, nothing. But okay, but I know what Pico's size was. And it was okay. Tammy, Miss Gardner.
TMA Gardner Smecco. I don't have exact figures either,
Okay.
but ballpark was somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000, and a 6-month implementation timeline.
Okay. God, you guys were holding out on me. BGE, anything? Well, Pico. Well, yeah, same thing. Okay, yeah, okay. Washington Gas, any thoughts?
We can utilize what we currently have. We just have to put more validations and stuff in.
More validations, okay.
Right, so I haven't got an estimate yet for the time.
Okay, that's understood. Okay, so less than $1 million, maybe, but.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, based on the comments I heard earlier. It seems like this is something that I'm hearing from the suppliers, at least Constellation, that they want to proceed with now, but they still want to proceed with Enroll with Your Wallet in the future. Well, unfortunately, these are not the only projects that BGE
Yes.
has that they're working on.
Yes, understood.
So it seems, we'd be delaying other projects to put a temporary gap in until we get to Enroll with Your Wallet.
Yep.
I just wanted to.
Okay, so BGE is flagging the issue that had was the foundation for why I made the comments I did, which was I perceive this as a one or the other. I appreciate Constellation's perspective, and clearly a 6-month implementation timeline is more attractive than, I'm not sure what wallet enrollments, but it's probably more attractive. So the reason I had articulated this as a one or the other was because I wasn't sure that the Commission would have the appetite to pursue a stopgap measure if they ultimately chose to pursue wallet enrollments. But I can reflect, it's a fair criticism that there may be some difference of opinion amongst the suppliers about whether a stopgap is desirable. I'll be careful in how I frame that in my write-up. So is there... are there any other thoughts about the lookup tool? We've got some preliminary cost estimates. Utilities will keep working on that. Because what I'd like to be able to do in my report is reflect, some high-level cost estimates, or at least speak to what it would cost elsewhere. Because the Commission's going to have to be able to make a comprehensive decision about which path to pursue, understanding everything that's at play. So, thank you for your homework responses. I'm returning it to you for additional work. Wallet enrollments. Leah, Ms. Gibbons was approaching to give us a synopsis of the supplier's proposal.
Sure. So I think the basic concept around Enroll with Your Wallet from our perspective is to basically make it a lot easier from the consumer's perspective to shop and choose a supplier of their choice. And, primarily that means getting away from a reliance by the customer and the supplier on needing to have that choice ID or service ID or whatever the number is that we're going to call it, because it differs by utility. And so the idea really is to find some other identifiers that a supplier could use to submit an enrollment to the utility, which then they, on the back end, could match up to the customer's account number and then go ahead and enroll the customer. And so I think, at a high level, and I definitely think to actually develop a proposal, we need to get a lot of input from the utilities on just what do they have the ability to match on. It feels like from the discussions we've had around IVRs and how they're able to match and find customer account numbers through the IVR system, it feels like there are some other variables we could be collecting that would help make that match. In terms of, how do you implement that and how do you actually operationalize doing that, at least the first pass of thinking that we've had on the issue is looking at that EDI transaction where today you're putting in an account number, actually making that field a little bit more dynamic that allows you more flexibility. So if we decide that to do a match we need a last name and address and last 4 digits of a social security number or a telephone number associated with the account, then make that field be able to take that information rather than the account number. You can put a phone number in that's associated with the account, something like that. I think we're open to ideas and just trying to brainstorm on what those fields could collect in that enrollment transaction that exists today in EDI. But at least as our ops folks kind of sat and thought about, well, what could you actually, looking at what the fields are in that transaction today, what could we actually put in instead of account number that would still allow the utilities to match that on the back end? Those are the kinds of things we were coming up with and thinking about. And so that's really the concept. I think it's, in terms of the actual number, it's not like account number goes away. I think the thought really is more that it would get matched up on the back end and then the enrollment could get processed. But from a consumer's perspective, it would be much easier. You can take their name, collect the matching information that you need, if it's last 4 digits of social, if it's telephone number, whatever we decided it would be, and use that to submit for the enrollment purpose instead of having to get that
choice ID or service number.
Okay, so the account number doesn't go away, but the concept of a choice ID number goes away because
Well,
that
it
doesn't
could
serve
still
any.
exist. It's not something that a customer needs, right? It wouldn't be something that the supplier and the customer need to submit. We'd need to instead collect from the customer the information that the utility needs to match up that account number with their account.
Right, but the choice ID number exists to serve the purpose of facilitating enrollment, so
Right.
it wouldn't have to go away, but it'd become irrelevant.
From the purpose of the consumers giving it, yes.
Yeah.
I think it would, yeah.
Okay, so you've thrown out some ideas about what would have to be matched. Suppliers are amenable to it being more than just name and address. You thought about phone numbers, last four of social, any others?
I mean, those are the two that kind of immediately come to mind based on looking at some of the IVR scripts and what the utilities are requiring customers to input into that system to be able to match and find their account numbers. So that was kind of the basis of trying to figure that out.
I can't remember if this was from Maryland PSC discussions or from other state discussions. I think it was from Maryland. I think in the past the commission was uncomfortable with the Social Security number idea, and that's why we went to customer choice.
Right.
Because it was.
Are you going to approach the mic?
Okay, I just
so
want to point out that some of these ideas might have already been considered maybe a long time ago, and I think that is what led to the customer choice ID number versus social.
And that may be true. And I mean, we're not wedded to any one of those numbers. I think, that's where I think if we could have a collaborative conversation about what would actually work from a, how do the utility systems work to match, that's great. And then, I think the one thing that's changed, because that conversation probably did happen, Jake, like 15 or 20 years ago. And I know we've had lots of conversations about customer account numbers in the preceding time, but I think one of the things that has changed and the new facts that sort of present themselves to us is at least looking north into Pennsylvania, where we've actually had access to account numbers by all suppliers that are licensed in the market, and there's nothing nefarious that's happened with having that account number information out there. It sort of leads you to this, it leads you to, at least from my perspective, a way of thinking that, well, these aren't really necessary. Bad things aren't happening, so they're not. All they're serving to do right now is be a barrier to customers being able to shop, because having access to those account numbers has not caused or been the source of any explicit trouble in that market, and they've been available for years. And so, in thinking about how to just improve the general customer experience with shopping, let's just move beyond it and not be so focused on those numbers.
Okay, so there are, in my mind, there's two or three discussion points here. There could be, legal or practical. Like I want to hear from people in the room, like legal or practical barriers to this. Like, is the choice ID and the tariff, like, what would have to be overcome from a legal perspective to facilitate this? And then there's a second category to discuss about consumer protections and like the implications of removing choice ID. And then the third is cost. So I don't care if you want to speak about each of those three, but those are the three that I'd like to hear from other people about.
Can I jump in, because
please?
I have to carpool today.
Please.
And so I was like, I think that it would be reasonable to put this discussion off until the website and the consumer pricing protections are fixed or addressed in phase 3, given that the current shopping tools are so minimal and so poor that it's very difficult today, even with a door-to-door salesman, that having your bill in front of you, because you do need your electric choice ID and that you're the decision maker of the account, that you actually pay it and you understand your bill, is incredibly important. And I just wanted to share a consumer experience I had, which I think just falls right into this, which is a shopping for a basic service and not understanding your rates. So when I left the movies 10 days ago and I saw Murder on the Orient Express, I got out of the Towson Cinemark Theater at 10:48. And I walked out, and there was a supplier selling product with a great reward. And it's close to 11 o'clock at night. And he was a super nice fellow. So I asked a few questions. I know a few things about it. And he was terrific. And I said, well, what kind of pricing plan would it be? And he told me. And I said, oh, so it's a 2-month teaser. So what would my rates be in month 3? What are my rates now? And I just asked a lot of pricing questions. And he was terrific. And he said, I don't know what your rates are going to be. And I said, well, how would I, we're sitting here at the movie theater. How would I compare these prices? Would I pull out my phone and get on the PSC website? I mean, I think it's a really interesting question that if we open up the shopping experience to anywhere you could possibly be, busy, you have your kids with you, you're tired, I just don't understand how this helps the consumer if there is no shopping tool, especially there's no gas shopping tool. So I think this is an interesting concept to put off until the PSC is better at marketing the rates, and that people understand their gas rates, and that they can easily get actual rates and know what they're comparing. So I think that's a stated obvious, but I absolutely had to say that because I don't see what consumers gain from this.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I got to go get the kids.
Yeah, understand. Mr. Trout?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the history here.
Please.
I listened with great interest to the last comments because I think I come out the same. You can't hear me. That's almost unique. Normally, I'm talking too loud. So the history of this, there are two things I think that are worth considering, and they may very well lead us to where the last speaker wanted to take us, which is this is a complicated subject and it belongs in phase 3 and not in what we're trying to wrap up in the report that you're writing now. We started the discussion about customer confidentiality and protecting customers in the shopping experience more than a decade ago. My memory is that one of the people that was most concerned about protecting customer information and customer confidentiality was Commissioner Curran. So how far back does that take you? That's maybe 15 years ago. Okay. And pretty early on, we settled on the customer account number or the shopping number because that was information that the customer controlled. And two things have happened since then. The first is that the markets have substantially developed, and Lee is absolutely right that there has not been the sort of parade of horribles that some folks were concerned about 15 years ago. The market in this respect has worked pretty well. On the other hand, what we've seen in the last several years is an almost total breakdown in people's security with respect to their own information on the internet and otherwise. So on the one hand, what people were afraid of 15 years ago has not come to pass, and that would encourage us to look at more or additional solutions to the legitimate problem that the retail suppliers want to focus us on. On the other hand, we live in what has become a wild west of unsecurity with respect to people's control over their own personal information, which would frankly lead us to be even more protective than Commissioner Curran and others were 15 years ago. So we need to find a way to strike a balance between those two things, and we're not going to do that on the fly in an hour in the last meeting of Phase 2.
Understood. Mrs. Bellman.
I'm really glad I followed the last two speakers because they have both said what I've wanted to say in a much nicer way than I probably would have said it. So, so just to briefly reiterate, I understand the belief that suppliers want to make it easier for consumers to shop. Without, and as Lauren said, without being able to see everything else to compare to, you're not really leading to a situation where it's easier for consumers to shop. You're going to a situation where it's easier for consumers to get talked into something they don't want to get talked into. Second point, as the gentleman just said, is that if you want to replace the choice ID number with something else, don't make it easier for data breaches to happen. And so, certainly not Social Security numbers. I don't know what that other identifying information is, but it needs to be something secure. Mm-hmm. My final point is just a point of information that I want to make sure that suppliers understand, and that is the Door-to-Door Sales Act applies whenever you're making a sale away from your fixed place of business. So if you're at a trade show, if you're in the shopping mall, if you're somewhere else selling things, the Door-to-Door Sales Act applies. And so the seller will need to provide a 3-day right of cancellation and all of the notification about that's required in the Door-to-Door Sales Act. I'm not sure if the suppliers know that. I just want to make sure they do know that. I want to make sure the commission knows that so that they're dealing with full information. And that's it.
Thank you.
I'll just add that I've made I think OPC's position known on this issue in the past, but I'd just like to point out, in addition to what these past speakers have said, is that there already is a system in place for customers to access this information. It's already been paid for, specifically that IVR system or websites or that call center that SMECO has. So we're really talking about possibly doing something really drastic to change what was and that some stakeholders still think is a very important part of the retail shopping framework here in Maryland, and we're doing that on top, to solve a perceived problem that may be much more minimal than the suppliers feel that it actually is.
Before I let you go, I just want to develop the record here. I know that you've probably spoken to your OPC's position on wallet enrollments in the past, but could you just briefly state,
So the customer choice ID number is to, in my view, the only function that it serves is to act as a final check against an unauthorized enrollment. It's sort of like why it's could be perceived to be a pain to apply for a mortgage, because you can't just use somebody's name and address. They're going to do a little bit more fact checking. Frankly, the utility does more fact checking when they're setting up the account. Getting more background information, authenticating somebody's identity. The comments that were made earlier that there's wallet enrollment in Pennsylvania and nothing nefarious has happened. I think what I view is we have a customer choice ID number in Maryland. We have seen slamming, so I don't see why removing that is. I don't know why there would be any assurance that we're not going to see more slamming if we make it easier for slamming to occur. Having said that, if a individual legitimately wants to enroll with a customer, I think that it would be appropriate to erect a series of unreasonable hurdles. But I'm not sure that that's what the law is currently. And with the combination of the customer choice ID number, which provides security against a customer that does not want to enroll by making it more difficult for an enrollment to occur without their permission, and the systems that the utilities have put in place to make it much easier for the customer to access that information, whether it be at home on their computer or at a mall with their cell phone. I think that in addition to whatever it would cost, I just don't see how any cost, even if it was only $10, would exceed the benefit that it's providing, given what's already in place.
Okay. Understood. So I've heard some like consumer protection objections to this. What I'm curious about is if the utility, like I didn't see the choice ID necessarily in Comar. I understand that it might be in the tariff or maybe somewhere that I've missed. Could any of my utility friends speak to where the choice ID like process is spelled out, so I could understand what would have to be changed from that perspective if we went down this route? That would help us. It's in Comar. The choice ID is in Comar. Okay, the account number. So you view the account number as synonymous with choice ID.
The choice ID, at least for BGE, came about because we implemented a new customer care and billing system. That it's a new Oracle, it's a relatively new Oracle product, and it had a parent-child relationship. So for us, the parent was the account number, then you had a separate choice ID, separate choice and electric IDs under. So for us, we had to zero in on the choice ID.
Okay, so
Other utilities that don't have gas or electric still use them.
account number. Okay, so my understanding.
I mean, yes, it's synonymous, except with the parent-child relationship with BGE.
Okay.
The intent certainly is the same.
Okay.
It's a number that is assigned to that customer. With us, you're using one step below in the hierarchy of the way the system's set up.
So is it fair to say that you had to create the choice ID because you're a combined electric gas utility and you had to have a unique identifier?
It doesn't make sense because why couldn't they just use there's something different between the customer choice ID number and the account number. And I'm not sure that would make it.
Like I said,
and doesn't every utility have something like that?
So in the old system where there was an account number for BG&E, where we're combined, there was one account number. So the problem with that is we would get enrollments for gas, and the customer didn't have gas, but they still had the account number. So what this does is it identifies.
Well, for us, in the old system, we had the account number, and that was what you used to enroll. When we get our new billing system, we now use the account number plus an installation number, which is the choice ID.
Why do you use that installation number in addition?
Because we have two things on, it could be outside lighting and residential charges. So you have to identify with that installation number whether you're doing outside lighting or residential or regular billing, which one you're enrolled.
So as far as the utilities are concerned, they don't think that it ever was intended to function as sort of like a retail choice social security number. It's always been internal reasons for making sure that the customers electing the commodity supply for
like a verification.
Or more than that, right? Because an account number could be verification. It's more to separate out different accounts that are going to be subject to the retail charges and possibly maintaining another account that is going to still be or supplies going to be still provided by the utility.
For PG&E, it identifies specifically the energy. So there's one for gas, and there's one for electric. The Comar definition for account number was a unique identifier for the customer that would enable a supplier to enroll that customer. So it still fulfills all the requirements, but it does avoid the problem that we saw in the past, where a supplier potentially trying to enroll a gas customer to their account number, when in fact the customer didn't even have gas. You wouldn't get a gas choice ID for a customer that didn't have gas.
Okay, so I don't see those two things as mutually exclusive. It sounds like the argument was that account number was the required enrollment item to ensure consumer protection, and that evolved into a choice ID for utilities that have dual services or have multiple like installed types of services.
A unique identifier that's specific to the supply, whether it's electric or gas, whereas opposed to that parent
it's interesting there because I mean, you know, if I wasn't around when restructuring occurred, or you know, for most of its existence. So you know, just inferring from what you know the existence of a customer choice ID provide. I mean, the function that it provides currently, in my opinion, is this like extra check. So that's why I thought that it was always there. But apparently, that is not its actual genesis. Now that should, I mean, it still has that secondary benefit. So there, you know, could be arguments that it should be maintained even if its original purpose was you know, something more internal to the utilities operation.
Okay. Okay, so in that case, at least you know, from where the utilities sit, the account number or choice ID account number should, okay, the account number is in COMAR and is thus a prerequisite, in that there's a section of COMAR that requires the account number to be provided for enrollment. Is that?
Well, but if we go back to in ARM 54, so the pre-enrollment information, that's that section of COMAR, I forget the number of it. But in the pre-enrollment information today, a supplier is supposed to, with the customer's authorization, request the account number from the utility. But the way it works in practicality is you need the account number to go request the account number. Right? So I mean, if you strictly looked at what was in COMAR today, we should be able to get that information without having the number. But we don't. We can't. Because as a practical matter, that's not how EDI has been set up.
Right, which is why we went down the path of the lookup tool and everything else. So, yeah, understood. Okay, so...
I'm still not, now I wasn't here when it was all developed, but I'm still not certain that it was seen as giving it back. I thought when I first came on the scene, I thought it was more to validate the information that you got. So you had the account number, the choice ID, you submit that, you get the information, and you're getting that back just as one of the validation points. At least that was my understanding.
Maybe. I wasn't here when they developed that rule either, but when you read COMAR, if you read strictly what that rule says, you get the authorization from the customer, submit it, and then you're supposed to get back like 12 points.
COMAR doesn't address what you're supposed, in that case, then.
Right.
COMAR doesn't address
It just says with authorization.
Submit to get.
Right. So I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, because to me, that's what I started out trying to address, and that was an imperfect.
The only reason I brought it up, Marissa, is to get to the point you were asking questions about what is in COMAR and around account number.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's not specified that it's needed for enrollment. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting what the rule is.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to solicit in this discussion. If any utility could add to the discussion where it says your account number choice ID is required as a prerequisite to enrollment. Is that in COMAR, or is that in your tariff, or do you need to get back to me?
It's not in there for gas.
Okay.
It's not in there for gas. I think this is electric, right?
I mean, I'm talking about both. I'm here. Okay, so in what I understand of the situation today is that across the board, electric, gas, what have you, utilities are requiring either your account number or a choice ID number, some kind of number associated with the account in order to process the enrollment with the supplier. And my question is that just how the practice evolved? What is it in your tariff that has to happen that way, or is it in COMAR somewhere that has to happen that way? I'm trying to get a handle on what would have to be addressed if we went down the route of walled enrollments. I need to understand.
Okay, on the gas side, in the COMAR, standard gas standards, you are required to have the account number, whatever that account number is. If, BG&E is a choice number, Washington Gas is a customer account number. I'm sure other utilities have it. You do have the option of getting customer information, as she was saying, 12 months usage without the account number. It's in the pre-enrollment for the gas. So that will, if you match it in the system, it will give you the 12 months plus the account number. But it is in COMAR. It's in the...
You know what section?
Yes, it's 2059.
Yeah, as far as 2059.
Yeah.
Okay, but you feel confident that's in
Oh,
there
it's
somewhere.
definitely in there.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. I'm not interested in the pre-enrollment section. Okay.
Right there, it says customer count. And notice of enrollment under, are you in gas or electric?
Gas.
That's just the notice that goes to the customer.
Right.
Okay. Well, I guess the answer is I'm not gonna get an answer right now.
I don't think it's explicitly in COMAR, so it must be part of the. You think it's actually firmly in COMAR? I don't remember.
Yeah, because it's required in a transaction. It's a required transaction. Take it home. So it's in the Maryland gas station. Well, I would imagine if it's in the gas standards, it would be in the equivalent.
You know, we may have left it in the gas standards because we filed the COMAR changes with the Maryland gas standards as a supplement. So I think Terry may be right exactly in the Maryland gas standards.
Maryland gas station. What is that? Is that a tariff or?
It's how the transactions for enrollments, drops, switches, charges.
It's like an implementation document, or?
That's part of it.
So is that part of the supplier?
Equivalent to what an EDI transaction is, but it's for all the XML. And I think Terry's right. There's a section at the beginning of that that has definitions and it has account number, and I think that's where it explains.
Okay.
So is that part of your tariff, or is it a generally applicable document?
It's part of the regulations. It was filed with the regulations.
Well, it's not. Yeah, my question is like, what's the legal status of that document?
My understanding was it was on the PSC website, and it's part of the requirement for a gas supplier to be active with any utilities. They have to go through testing protocols, and they have to meet every one of those gas standards to become active with the utility and the choice program. And if they fail to do so, they don't become active. So we test for those things. We test for the name and address search. We test for the ability of them to include an accurate gas choice ID in an enrollment transaction or drop transaction. So it's pervasive in the Maryland gas system and we testing. And I thought all that was out on the PSC website.
Yeah, where's the
Yeah.
Yeah, what section?
Let me pull up the gas
Okay.
standards, physical reference.
All right, so Matt found a link off the BGE website, but like I can't quite tell if it's that in your COMAR somewhere it says like in accordance with the filed manual, because the filed manual that he has just says 2059. It's not, doesn't drill down any further. So we spent enough time on that question. Now I'm going to have to ask the utilities to figure out what the answer to that question is for me. I need to know the legal status of that document and like whether there's an equivalent on the electric side. Does my question make sense? I'll write it up.
Wait a minute, you should ask Annette, because she's the one that filed it.
Ask Annette. Okay. Okay. Well. Mhm. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get the answer to that question. Meaning, okay, because I need to have a grasp on like what would need to be changed if we went down this route. I think the answer is clearly something. It's just the question of like if it's a tariff that needs to be changed or if it's regs that need to be changed, because clearly one is a heavier lift than the other in terms of timeline.
Changes to the enrollment, that would go through the EDI working group, not this group.
Right.
They'd be the ones to approve any changes or.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
So what?
The EDI working group.
EDI worker.
Maryland EDI working group.
Phil runs it, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
Phil Van Hayden does it.
Do you meet, does the EDI worker meet regularly? Once a month. Has this topic come up in EDI? Wall enrollment? Am I traversing traveled ground?
And Annette does it on the gas line.
Okay.
We're still working on net meter aggregation.
Oh, Jesus. I take that back. EDI XML. Okay. Okay. Great. Is there any? Does anyone else want to be heard on generally on the topic of wallet enrollments? I mean, clearly there would be a cost to implement this. Any thoughts? Any other thoughts? Anything, Mr. Mike Heel?
So, Doug Mike Heel, PHI. This is kind of last minute. I think I echo OPC and PE's statement. I mean, right now we don't really know the costs, and we didn't have time to look at the costs. You know, we have the EDI work group that the folks were talking about, and I think it's probably more appropriate to talk about it in the EDI work group. And, you know, we already have the IVR and the CD web lookup. So, you know, I think at this point in this proceeding, this being the last day, it's a little too late to be going down the wallet lookup path.
Okay. Ms. McIntyre.
Well, I would say that this is the customer choice PC44 workshop, and one of the elements of customer choice is to have customers having choices. And I think you've heard from a lot of the suppliers that there is a frustration in getting, in the customers having the ability to sign up in certain places and in certain circumstances, but they don't have the account number. So we're trying to facilitate that. I don't have a problem if we coordinate with EDI, but I would not take it off the plate of this group. Whether it has to be done now, I think I agree with everybody here. It's 4 o'clock, and if this is our last working group meeting, we're not going to solve that, I don't think, in this meeting. But I think it's a phase 3 item that needs to be discussed, and maybe you bring in the EDI group to make sure that we coordinate with them, but I wouldn't take it off the table.
Sure. So let me go ahead and preview like the next steps portion of this, because you know, I understood that it's 4 o'clock on my last working group meeting. But here's what I was thinking in terms of the work group leader report. To me, at least from where I'm sitting and comments that I have heard, it feels like it's a bit of a policy decision whether we go away from the choice ID number or we keep it and facilitate easier access to it. To me, those are divergent paths, and maybe there's some merit, as we heard, to implementing one as a stopgap to the other, but at its base, to me, it's a policy decision about which path we pursue. From that perspective, I feel as if we could have another 5 years at this, and we may not reach a consensus amongst the work group members about which path to pursue, meaning that it's something, from my perspective, that I would prefer to put in front of the commissioners as a judgment about which path to go on. And to me, the easiest way to do that is to frame it in this work group report as the two separate options. It's a little bit of a unique situation in that the overwhelming majority of my report is a petition for rulemaking. And then I think that there's room to squeeze in some, policy questions for them. But I'm happy to tee up both of these solutions, the lookup tool and the wallet enrollment. I'm happy to tee them up in my report and suggest that both be pursued or that they would both be pursued in phase 3. But I want them to tell us which one or the other or both to do. So that's why I wanted to have the conversation today, not with this is something I should have said to begin with, obviously, not with the expectation that we would have fleshed out either of these issues, but I need to know the full scope and breadth of what's going on with both of them so I can put them before the commission and ask for their policy guidance on which to pursue in phase 3. So I've taken notes on what you said here. And when my report is circulated, I'm sure you'll let me know if it doesn't capture the range of opinions on this issue. I just need the outstanding item that I need information on is the utility assignment about the legal status of that document. Mr. Young.
Yep. It's used and utilized across various states for shopping purposes. So I don't know that it's just.
But why is it used?
I'm just saying it might not be necessarily
Yeah.
Maryland item. It's
Well, yeah,
across-
I'm definitely that's definitely true.
So that was the only point I was making, and I think the other thing, I don't know that we'll ever get in a world where we're completely done with the customer number, right? Choice ID. It's a unique identifier in our system, and I can't imagine what that rewrite would cost to do away with something like that. To do something like, I don't know, work with the EDI working group to have an enrollment transaction that doesn't need the 20-digit number, but gives it to them to use for alternate purposes. I don't know, maybe that's something to talk about, but I just don't know that, I can't see getting completely away from that number.
Understood.
All the other states and how they operate.
Understood. And in that case, I get that if we went down the path of wallet enrollment, that one solution would be to pursue how that would work at the EDI work group. That assumes that we would get a COMAR change or tariff change, whatever it is, that removes the choice ID number as a prerequisite to enrollment. So that's the piece that I'm missing, is what needs to be changed to allow that before it goes to EDI. Mr. McShane.
Yeah, so the Maryland gas standard,
Mm-hmm.
again, were filed at the same time as we're supposed to accompany 2059, 3.2.28, LDC account number, the customer's unique identifier as assigned by the LDC that is required in all transactions except pre-enrollment account information, and that's where we use the name and address as a
And you're reading to me from the manual. Okay. Yeah. So I need to know. The status of that document. Is that document incorporated by reference into the regs, or is it a tariff, or is it some other?
It's incorporated by reference, I thought, into the again, and that's
I'll ask Annette. Okay.
She filed both for the commission to review and approve, and they approved both at the same time.
Was it an RM54? Was that approved? No, this is
Same with the EDI. I mean, the implementation guide,
30.
they go through annual revisions and the commission approves them.
Okay, manuals. All right. I'll pursue that with Annette. Any other comments that you want to put on the record and on my record for wallet enrollment? Okay. Awesome. Okay, another fun topic, cost recovery. Okay. So, it's not that I think we have any opportunity here to recommend a cost recovery methodology that would bind the commission, but it's my perception that the commission would generally like to have this topic discussed, like from a high level, like where do we contemplate this coming from? We've gotten some estimates on what it would cost to implement seamless moves and instant connects, with all the appropriate caveats. And then we've heard some like very rough estimates about the lookup tools, but like clearly all of these market enhancements cost money. So I want to hear from folks about how, if they have any thoughts about how this would be recovered. Is this, base rates? Is this the suppliers are chipping in for a portion? Is it suppliers are paying for it? Like there are clearly lots of models, and I'm sure there are lots of models that have been pursued elsewhere. The only like slush money that I've like come across in my research, we have this new fund, the Retail Choice Education Fund, which has $40,000 in it, and I think we could potentially tap that for like our website project in phase 3. But I can't find any other money that's unspoken for in like my budget. Like that's the idea here. Is I wanted to see if there were any thoughts about how these market enhancements would be pursued, because my guess is that certain people would not object to us enhancing the market in these ways if it wasn't on the backs of certain customers. Let me hear, please, Ms. McIntyre.
I'll offer the first opinion so everybody else can disagree. But, as I said before in my earlier statement, Bernice McIntyre, WGL Energy Services, you have sort of in this room, it appears that suppliers are pitted against the Office of People's Counsel and the consumer representatives and the utilities. But I would state that the suppliers are merely asking for something that our customers want and that other customers would want in order to make it easier for them to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And for that using that logic, I believe those costs should be spread across all customers, because ultimately, in a world of the future, there may be a majority of customers that are picking different types of solutions for their energy products than the utility. Always the utilities will be doing the distribution cost. Mm-hmm. But that would be the way I would advocate. There may be some suppliers who are willing to bear some of these costs, and that may be a solution that would be offered. But on a theoretical basis, I don't understand that, because I think it's about the customer and giving them the choice.
Thank you. So we're talking about... You're not. I was about to say that I'm not intending to pit you guys against each other, and that didn't work.
I've made OPC's position known, but I'll just say it again for the record.
Please.
And let me say it a little differently than I've said in the past.
Okay.
In a way, there's a proposal to add a new product or service being thrown out there, and to the extent that I'm representing residential customers, I'm going to say OPC's position is we're not sold. We're not going to buy that project. So by all means, if you want to move forward and it's not going to cost me anything, then we have no objection to the seamless moves and connects. If I have to pay for even $1 worth of it, we oppose it because we don't choose to purchase it. The analogy to that Bernice was making sort of overlooks the fact that not all customers are participating. Mm-hmm. So any cost that you're talking about is going to be recovered from all ratepayers, or potentially within classes. So it might be all residential ratepayers, but only a fraction of those customers are going to utilize the service. Now, the way I view it, the biggest beneficiary of seamless moves and instant connects are the suppliers. That's why they're proposing it. If they want it and they think it is so important and is going to improve the market, in various ways, then let them pay for it. That's actually a market. One of the ways a market works, right? Is the decisions that they make, for their business, are going to, come with risks or costs, and they're going to have to, engage in that cost-benefit analysis to decide whether it's truly worth it to them to pay the, potentially millions of dollars it's going to cost to implement these systems. So I say let the market forces work, let the suppliers pay for it, and if it makes sense, it makes sense, and if not, it doesn't, and the market will have decided.
Thank you. So, can I just clarify one thing that you said? So, as the regs exist in their current format for seamless moves and instant connects, the objection from OPC would be on the basis of cost recovery. If the cost recovery was socialized to the residential.
Exactly.
Cost. Okay. I think that I just want to make sure I'm going off topic a little bit because
However, that's a big thing because I don't think it's going to go forward if there's not. So you could frame it that way that we're not opposed, but in actuality, I don't see how this thing's going to move forward without residential ratepayer recovery. And so, for all intents and purposes, we are opposed to it.
Okay, Mr. McDougall.
I could. My short comments are ditto.
Okay.
Right now, SMECO has about 5,500 choice customers. We have about 163,000 total customers. So it's a very small percentage of our customer base that have taken advantage of choice. This year, these 5,500 some odd customers have paid about $1.5 million more for having chosen another supplier than had they stayed with standard offer service. We've done that analysis, and it's true. So it's clear to me that People's Counsel was right that that this new product is a product that is being that is being propounded by companies who will benefit financially from it. Certainly, the utilities will not. And so as a result, I support OPC in that I think that those companies that will be benefiting from it ought to be paying for it.
Thank you. So, okay, so in other words, you would not support having these costs recovered through base rates or...
Absolutely not.
Okay.
We, as a cooperative, we are our customers' representative. We don't have shareholders. And so we're in a very similar position as is OPC, in that they represent our residential customers. They represent other utilities' residential customers. And we represent all of our customers because they own our business. So we do not think that our customers ought to be paying for the product that is primarily benefiting other suppliers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any other questions for you.
And then I have no more answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Can I hear? Is there? And the suppliers have.
So, I hear the point that these are market enhancements that will primarily benefit suppliers, but I want to push back on that a little bit because these, foundational programs, Seamless Moves, Instant Connects, we're not seeking an affirmative benefit. We're seeking to level the playing field because the market design as it exists today affords a pretty strong advantage to the utilities standard offer supply service because customers are automatically enrolled in that supply service, which we have to compete against on day one when they establish their utility account. And if they move from one premise to another, they're re-enrolled in that SOS service by default. So we're not seeking market improvements to provide a financial advantage. We're seeking to level the playing field here. So I don't think it's fair to characterize these supplier requests as some sort of windfall to the retail supplier community. We're just seeking a level playing field.
Thank you.
In response to that, I just want to add that we're not talking about making this decision in a vacuum. We're talking about an incremental addition to a system that's already in place. So we already have accelerated switching, seamless moves, and instant connects. We're going to gain, maybe between 3 days and maybe 5 to 6 if there's like a weird holiday weekend in between. So we really need to be thinking about it on that basis. We're spending this amount of money to get this amount of benefit. And frankly, the best the best evidence that this isn't a good idea is whether the people who are going to benefit from it the most are willing to pay for it or not. The answer is no. It would be a very rare situation where it would make good public policy to move forward with that proposal. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I feel like my audience is dwindling here. Okay, so I'm sure we could go. I think I understand the sides of the issue well enough to present them here. I just want to make sure that I've got all my bases covered. In that, am I missing a pot of money that could pay for this? No.
Not if your pot includes the suppliers.
Okay, no other no other funds I'm missing. Okay, so
BGE does have, at least for BGE, a negative POR discount account.
BGE has a negative POR discount balance. Anybody else? What did we do with RM54 in your most recent rate case?
You know what? I was going to stay out of this. That just pushed me over the edge. That the theory that we should be paying suppliers a premium to buy their arrearages illustrates a fundamental flaw with how we've been thinking about the retail market in Maryland for a number of years now. There is no such thing as a negative POR balance, or there shouldn't be such a thing as a negative POR balance, because there's no way that a supplier receivable is worth more than 100 cents on the dollar to any utility. So that ain't a slush fund, and it's not an argument for pushing the costs of this off to be socialized on all the customers.
Understood. Okay. My remaining question. The idea of so we heard the analogy in Pennsylvania for their lookup tool that suppliers could opt into it with the paying $5,000. Somebody told me about that. Okay, so in my mind, that doesn't seem like it would work for seamless moves or instant connects, because it wouldn't be a supplier opting in. It'd have to be all suppliers that were eligible for it. So the only way I can think of doing this, if it wasn't socialized, and this is I'm asking a rebuttable presumption. The only way I can think about doing this is it would be an assessment on supply, like all licensed suppliers, in that it would be derived by, looking at the cost for the service territory and dividing by all licensed suppliers in that service territory.
That's actually an interesting idea.
I'm full of good ideas.
Suppliers select all that they're going to operate in all service territories, even if they don't intend to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would, if you started, funding things through these assessments, that would be a good way of making sure that the actual active participants in that market are actually actively participating and are willing to pay those assessments in exchange for their right to operate there.
Yes.
That's an interesting idea.
So, I guess what I'm saying here is, in this section of my report, I was contemplating, reflecting both sides of the argument that we've heard here today, and then suggesting the only two recovery models I see are socializing or the one that I just articulated. If there is a third or fourth...
I could give you probably 12. But, just to be clear, so Constellation at this point, we are not prepared to offer a recommendation as to cost recovery. However, these programs have been implemented in many other jurisdictions, and there are a variety of ways mechanically that it can be structured. So, we're open to some portion or even perhaps all being the responsibility ultimately of suppliers or the supplier community, but there's other ways that could be implemented beyond the assessment approach that you just mentioned. One, and this is how POR and utility billing was implemented in the ComEd service territory in Illinois, there was an initial upfront cost recovery from ratepayers with some type of per bill fee, which paid that pot of dollars down over time. So ultimately, suppliers footed the bill, but it wasn't upfront. It was ratepayer funded upfront. So that's one example.
Okay.
There is the purchase of receivables discount rate, which is another option that could be on the table. And again, I want to be clear, we're not endorsing any of these methodologies. We just think it's important to explore all of them as part of the report.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm open to including as many as options as you want. But I can, what I'm trying to convey to people in this room is, I can put these regs before the commissioners, but I don't see them like approving them unless we like have a general thought about how we're going to go about recovering these. I mean, we saw that in RM54. I think there was a lot of heartburn after the fact that no one had quite thought through how all of those costs were going to be recovered, and we've had a patchwork of recovery options since. So I'm not asking for like an endorsement of these models, bless you, as part of this report, but any options that like have legs or anything like that, I think I need to reflect in this report as like models, because if we go to them with no cost recovery options, I feel like they're going to say no. So
I didn't have many options other than just a couple that were being discussed, but I did have an alternative to the socialization option that was talked about, and I believe the socialization option was that the costs of making the systems compliant with whatever rules are developed should be socialized or billed to those suppliers, socialized that way, billed to those suppliers who want to do business in that service territory.
She means ratepayers. You say socialized, right?
yeah,
Oh, you mean socialized?
I'm socialized a ratepayer. So
My bad. Then I don't want
Two
to use
extremes.
socialization at all, as you well know. There was an option about assigning the cost in a particular service territory to the suppliers that want to do business in that service territory. I don't know whether it would cost SMECO any more or less appreciably than it might cost the BGE to change its computer systems around.
they are on the screen.
Well, I don't know what. I'm not on the screen, so I can't tell you.
Yeah, you are. You're,
Oh, am I?
yeah.
Son of a gun.
And actually, it's strangely consistent. So
Yeah.
It must just be
So-
the base cost of doing it.
So we have far fewer customers than BGE does.
Yeah.
And a whole lot fewer suppliers than BGE does in its service territory. So so I think that the suppliers doing business in our service territory would bear a proportionally larger portion than they would if they did business in BGE service territory. So my option B might be that all of the utilities file the costs of their doing of compliance with this commission, who then allocates the costs statewide to the suppliers based upon maybe statewide sales, as opposed to service territory by service territory. It would seem to me then that it would be more equally distributed among suppliers. Just a thought.
I think it would also be interesting to know and maybe include in the report whether a party, we've talked about OPC's position. If we didn't have to pay for it, then we're fine with instant connects and seamless moves. But it'd be interesting to know whether the suppliers would be willing. Do suppliers think it's so important that they're willing to move forward, even if it means that the commission might? Because we're talking about market enhancements here. So if it's good for the market, regardless of how any party feels, the ratepayers, utilities, or the suppliers, then it could be imposed because the commission has an obligation to oversee and ensure that the retail market is functioning appropriately. So it'd be interesting to know whether the suppliers would be willing to have the instant connects and seamless moves implemented, even if that meant at the same time as the commission makes that decision that they're also going to impose cost recovery on all suppliers through this assessment method that you just mentioned.
You mean you want them to say that now?
Well, it's one thing that's difficult is that we have some suppliers in the room, and I know RISA is participating, but they don't represent every supplier, just a lot of them. So it would be interesting for suppliers that are willing to do it to indicate whether their position is being in support of seamless moves and instant connects, how that's affected by the possibility or the prospect of cost recovery being placed on them rather than ratepayers or some other party.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Trout.
In the interest of fairness, I did think of a sort of an outside-the-box way of doing cost recovery. I'm not sure. I haven't, because I've had like 2 minutes to think about it, so I don't know whether it's one that my client would necessarily like or other similarly situated parties would necessarily like, but since you're asking for ideas, I thought it would be fair if I put it on the table. Standard offer service works as follows. The utility goes out and buys power, and then that power is used by our customers who haven't shopped. And we collect from those customers the cost of the power, plus a return, plus incremental, plus a set amount for incremental costs. And then there's a true-up done every year of the actual incremental costs for some or all of the standard offer service against the amount that we collect. And the surplus, when there is one, and I think for us there's always been one, the surplus gets returned to all customers. So the money gets collected as part of the price of standard offer service. It's the markup. It's part of the markup that's built into standard offer service to make it easier for suppliers to compete against standard offer service. And this was how standard offer service was designed 16 years ago. It has this markup in it, and then the money gets distributed not to standard offer service customers, but to all customers, including standard offer service customers. So it gets
Is that a line
socialized out.
item?
It's kind of a reverse socialization.
Yeah, is that a line item on your bill, or is it like a credit?
It's part of the cost of standard offer service, and there's an annual reconciliation that we do with the commission.
So the ratepayer
this
doesn't see the credit. It's just baked into.
Oh, the customers see the credit.
Okay, so it's a
Customers do
credit
see
on
the
your
credit,
bill
yeah.
called SOS.
I think it's the ECA. Is that? I mean, Bill, help me out here.
I'm not sure if it's even shown as a separate.
It may not be shown as a separate line item, but the customers, standard offer service customers pay it, and then the surplus gets distributed to all customers.
So if you're using distribution charges, not commodity charges?
It isn't an offset to distribution charges. That's not how it works. It's a credit to all customers. Yeah.
Okay,
So if you're looking for a pot of money, if you were going to socialize this, right, and I'm not advocating that at all, but if you were going to socialize this, there's a different way of socializing it. Taking the cost, adding those costs to the costs that the utilities reconcile against. Exactly. So like I said, I've had now 3 minutes to think about this. I don't know whether it's a particularly good idea from a utility perspective, let alone from a policy perspective. But I wanted to be fair to everybody and put it out on the table that it's there.
Thank you.
My reaction, if I understand what you're saying, is that maybe there's a problem with the system as it is now. Because I mean, the way charges are traditionally, assessed is on a cost causation basis. So if any cost should also be matched with a benefit. So if a benefit is coming in because of costs that only some customers are paying, then the benefit should, as best as possible, be directed to those customers. So I'm not sure that the solution is to use that money to fund this seamless moves or instant connects, it might be to more directly target it to the standard offer customers versus all customers, even ones that are choosing to get their supply from a supplier.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying it's a possible idea. It's a source of money that otherwise is going out to all customers that you could tap. It's to fit Marissa's description. It's a pot of money we hadn't thought of. The second is your point about the disconnect between this mechanism and the principles of cost causation. You are absolutely right, and and that was done deliberately. And I'm looking around here. I think I may be the only person in this room who was there when this was designed 16 years ago. It was deliberately designed to be a disconnect. It was deliberately designed to increase the cost of standard offer service and
nobody
therefore
would choose
increase the cost of the product that the retail market would compete against. And so you would,
That's crazy. I didn't know about this.
Well, believe me, OPC had a lot to say about it at the time.
Well, it's weird though because currently suppliers, for the most part, can't consistently beat standard offer service, even with the you guys almost have like a weight on your bats while you're up the bat, and you're still suppliers still having a hard time.
Yeah, I mean you'd have to go back to we had weeks of months of work group discussions, and then days of discussions, including testimony in front of the commission, where we beat that and related issues totally to death.
I feel like this is the subject of a recently issued PHI order and a pending BGE order, and the administrative cost of the
It
SOS.
relates to the administrative cost issue, but it's taking that case is about reducing what the utilities could collect.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is that there's still a pot of money there, and instead of having the utilities pass that money out to customers, the utilities could.
Yeah, the question is
use
how
it
much
to
that
pay.
is.
Yeah.
Just buy a lot of Powerball tickets and win.
No, that's my retirement plan.
Okay. I appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking. Mr. McDougall.
Marissa, I just wanted to point out that might be true for the investor-owned utilities, but the cooperative does not have that extra charge in standard offer service. We resisted that in our settlement many years ago.
Successfully, apparently.
Well.
I meant to mention that.
Yeah. Okay, some audience is seriously dwindling, so let me just wrap this up. I think we've got a series. It seems like there's extremes and then there's mixtures, and I'll have you look that over in the report. So let me just wrap up with next steps. Today's the 28th, so I've got a month and a few days to issue this report. My intention is and continues to be to allow you all to review the report before it's submitted. I will not be accepting substantive edits to my opinions on things, but if you think that it needs to be clarified, especially where I'm representing what you feel was your viewpoint, I am open to those discussions. But there will be no further discussions or elaborations or, anything. We're not adding to the topics in this report. So just remember the Phase 1 regulations that dealt with data access, those were filed with the Commission. But as I said at the couple months ago, those are going to be combined with the attachment 1 that we've been discussing here, and refiled in my report because there was some formatting issues with Phase 1. So I don't intend to make any substantive changes to where those were left. I just have to fix some formatting. So those will be refiled in my report so that there's a petition for one rulemaking that addresses the regulations that we've discussed today and in Phase 1. Also attached to my report will be the appended guidance documents for seamless moves and instant connects. As we've already discussed, there will be the discussion of the lookup tool versus vault enrollments, or something in between. And finally, there will be a recommendation on phase 3. I have a few items that I've taken note of that the group has expressed interest in revisiting in phase 3. I think the overwhelming one is the website. As I mentioned, I looked into that pot of money that we have for retail choice education. It's the fund that suppliers pay any penalties into. My understanding is that there's a balance of $40,000. Clearly that would go up if we find anyone else. But right now it's $40,000. So, oh yeah, sorry, I don't know why I said that. It could go up. It could, Okay. So there's $40,000. So the only other thing I was going to recommend in phase 3 was what we talked through with Annette earlier today, was that there were some consumer protections on the non-residential side that maybe just need a little bit more vetting. So that's all got to go into this report, and run by you all and have a fair amount of time for you to look it over. I'm not going to be representing it as a consensus, document. Like, that's not my intent. It's the work group leaders report, and you all will be encouraged to file comments in the rulemaking docket when it's submitted. What I do not want to see, please, is any comments that have not been discussed here. Obviously, there are some places that you disagree with my changes to the regs, and I would encourage you to submit those regs. A good example is the website one. If you still feel strongly about adding those two things, please do so. But please do not nitpick the seamless moves and instant connects regulations any further, especially if we have not discussed it here. So, any questions? Because my intent is not to meet again in phase 2. If there is like a all-out war in response to my proposed report, we can talk about a conference call, but I'm not doing this again. Especially because there will be phase 3. Any questions? Anything I've not covered? Right, anything?
We're good.
People have been fairly quiet remotely. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for coming.